Chapter 1383. Hiss. Wrong thinking. The old turtle asked, What? What idea is wrong? Han Fei was startled by his own idea. However, he then thought, if I can think of it, then the strong masters like the old turtle must have thought of it too. So, why didn't they tell me? Is it because the old turtle and the insect king didn't want to tell me? If the old turtle thought so, it was reasonable. However, the insect king didn't tell him this at the beginning. It seemed that he didn't realize this at all. Or did the insect king not think about this problem at all? However, Han Fei felt that the strong masters at their level couldn't make any progress in their strength for thousands of years. They had nothing to do for hundreds of thousands of years and could only think about these problems. How could they not think of it? Ignoring the old turtle, 100 points of spiritual energy suddenly appeared in Han Fei's hand. Disassembling 50% of the spiritual energy, he blasted out the 2 points of spiritual energy at once. As a result, a 1.6-meter mark was blasted out in the water. Seeing this scene, Han Fei blasted out the 2 points of spiritual energy that he had disassembled with 62% of the spiritual energy. The result surprised Han Fei. The mark blasted out in the water was only less than 2 inches longer. No. Han Fei immediately shook his head. After all, he didn't understand the power of the great way contained in the spiritual energy. He didn't know how much it could improve his strength. When he disassembled it, how much of the power of the great way was divided? He didn't know. Obviously, the disassembling degree was 12% different, but the power that erupted was not very different. Could it be that the more he disassembled the spiritual energy, the less benefit he would get? This should be what most people felt. Therefore, the disassembling of spiritual energy became more and more difficult. In fact, the difference between 50% and 80% was not very big. Some people could make do with it and could accept it. However, Han Fei didn't think he could. In any case, he had to know the internal mechanism and the internal reason, right? Otherwise, he would always be unwilling. There seemed to be a big problem in this. Han Fei couldn't help saying, Old Yuan, you said that there's a trace of the power of the Great Way in the spiritual energy. This power of the Great Way can at most make 1 point of spiritual energy stronger than in the normal state. Huh? The old turtle suddenly exclaimed in surprise. You found out? You only used half an incense stick's time to discover the problem? Han Fei was dumbfounded. You know what I found? The old turtle was a little surprised. Of course, it's because you discovered the power contained in spiritual energy. Due to the difference in individual strength and mastery, the power they could display was also different. Even if there are people in the same realm as you who can disassemble spiritual chi to the same degree, the power you can exert is actually different. Han Fei frowned. So, because everyone who uses spiritual energy is a variable, the final power obtained after spiritual energy is disassembled is different? Old turtle, that's right. Actually, this shouldn't be something you need to consider. Why did you suddenly comprehend this now? Han Fei really wanted to roll his eyes at the old turtle. Do I need to be enlightened? There must be a difference between a shoddy product and a high-quality imitation. Since the disassembly of spiritual energy is a standard to measure whether a person can become a venerable or a king, I have to be clear about this thing. Otherwise, even when I disassembled 50% and 60%, the result of the explosive power was obviously wrong. Would I still have to lie to myself with the bullsh asterisk T of the more I disassemble, the harder it will be, and the smaller the improvement will be? Am I still a new human being? Han Fei immediately asked. Just tell me about yourself. How strong can 1 point of spiritual energy be if I am used as a test? The old turtle thought for a moment and said, Then I may be a little scared if I tell you. Han Fei curled his lips and said, I'm not scared. Tell me, when you were with me, what was the rate at which you used spiritual energy to disassemble? How much of my ordinary point of spiritual energy could you exert? The old turtle said leisurely, When I was an explorer, I could probably exert about 1.8 times of your point of spiritual energy. Han Fei's lips twitched. What about the venerable realm? The old turtle said leisurely, in the venerable realm. In the peak state, it was about 6 times. Hiss, F*CK. I'm not an educated person. Don't lie to me. Are you sure you're using spiritual energy? Did he use that chaos chi or something? The old turtle sneered. Lie to you? Do I have to lie to you? Not that I'm bragging, but I've never seen anyone who can exert more than 4 times the power of a point of spiritual energy. If I hadn't been unlucky, I would have been an emperor by now. Han Fei thought to himself. Do you think I'm going to believe you? Theoretically, other people can only get twice the spiritual energy by disassembling spiritual energy. But you almost made me 4 times of it. Han Fei said angrily. So you disassembled 1 point of spiritual energy into 4 points of spiritual energy. The old turtle said disdainfully, don't be sarcastic. At that time, you will find that the power contained in 1 point of spiritual energy is actually beyond your imagination. When you completely disassemble 1 point of spiritual energy into 2 points, you may find that the power of the great path contained in the spiritual energy still has room to be excavated. Han Fei said with a dumbfounded look, it means that the energy of spiritual energy is not enough to be divided into 2 parts. The power of the great path in the spiritual energy can still be excavated? The old turtle said, that's why I said, how did you realize this problem now? In the early stage of disassembling spiritual energy, because the gap is not big, there is not much difference before the venerable realm. The origin of power you're pursuing is something that only the venerable realm will consider. You have a very long time to think about this matter. Han Fei immediately said angrily, you just told me that I can improve my strength by improving the speed of disassembling spiritual energy. If the gap is not big before, then what's the point of improving the speed of disassembling spiritual energy? Besides, everything has its origin. That's the right way. The old turtle said indifferently, you said the origin. The origin is the most difficult thing to understand. Besides, although I said it's almost the same, the effect it actually shows is not the same. Don't blame me. You can try to understand it. If you can exert the power that I had in the past, then the improvement will be great. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. In fact, it was just a conjecture about the disassembling of spiritual energy. But knowing that it was a conjecture, the disassembling itself was a boring process. So he had to continue. The time was too short, and Han Fei didn't have the energy to disassemble the spiritual energy bit by bit. He gave himself 3 days. If he couldn't come up with a good solution within 3 days, then he would continue. The first day, Han Fei tried to use his own great path to permeate the spiritual energy, which was the great path infiltration method that the insect king mentioned. According to his own idea, the great path and the heavenly path were both Taoists anyway. What if he integrated them? As a result, after experimenting for a day and a night, Han Fei even imagined that he could disassemble spiritual energy to 4 times the power, but it didn't work. Under the Great Path Infiltration method, the utilization rate of 1 point of spiritual energy was far lower than that of his own forging and disassembling method. Thinking about it, Han Fei felt that it might be because his forging skill was too low. Ever since he entered the reincarnation realm, entered the 100,000 mountains, and learned the 100 Wars divine hammer, he rarely refined with normal methods. Therefore, Han Fei deduced the spiritual fire variation by the way. All things solution, heaven-level divine quality. Note, this is a method to melt all things. It can derive all kinds of fire and try to strip the origin of all things, get rid of the impurities, and extract the essence to make the origin of all things pure. It can have different effects in the hands of different people. Deduced art, dissociative fire completion, 0/100 million otherwise. Why would the demon purification pot be so amazing? This move was indeed useful. All things solution was more advanced than the spiritual fire variation. At the same time, the refining technique seemed to be able to use the power of the great path in the spiritual energy. As a result, Han Fei's progress reached 65%. After a day, Han Fei saw that the progress was still stuck at 65%. Han Fei thought that all things solution was just a name, but it couldn't really solve all things. So, he deduced the dissociative fire. Dissociative fire, venerable level, mid-quality. Note, this is a method to melt all things. It can derive all kinds of fire and try to strip the origin of all things, getting rid of the impurities and extracting the essence. With the dissociative fire, it can dissociate the origin of matter and extract its essence. It can have different effects in the hands of different people. Deduced art. Dissociative fire completion. 0/1 billion. Seeing this, Han Fei found that the so-called dissociative fire had returned to the pure refining technique. He was able to analyze the most essential substance from a material. He tried it himself and found that the so-called dissociative fire could only increase the progress by 1% during this period. For a moment, Han Fei felt quite embarrassed. It seemed that the refining technique was not the most important thing. The most important thing was the specific effect of the refining technique. For example, the so-called dissociative fire was more like a refining technique that directly turned into a kind of fire. And he had no need for fire now. In this vast water realm, what else could fire be used for except refining? If it was for refining, he didn't lack weapons at all with the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Han Fei's real progress was 4%. The old turtle was startled by the speed of his progress. He thought to himself, if I let him go on like this, in another month or so, won't I have to disassemble the spiritual chi of the venerable realm for him in advance? In addition to this, the old turtle found that every time Han Fei consumed spiritual energy, he would gain a new ability. Suddenly, the old turtle felt that he had discovered something. Han Fei is actually exchanging combat skills with the little calabash. The old turtle couldn't help but be shocked. What the hell is this calabash? Could it exchange cultivation methods and combat skills for Han Fei endlessly? Unfortunately, the old turtle couldn't understand it after all. In the past 3 days, Han Fei improved the progress of his spiritual energy, disassembling a little. In fact, his adaptability to the king's coercion had also increased a lot. After all, he was not an ordinary cultivator. When his strength increased by 2 small levels, his spiritual energy disassembling went further, and his foundation was polished to a higher level. Han Fei slowly sank. In fact, this layer of green mist was not deep. It was only a mere 100 meters deep. When Han Fei really crossed this 100 meters, his whole body was cracked and his 7 apertures were bleeding. Every once in a while, he would cast a holy light technique on himself. At this moment, Han Fei's eyes widened. He saw that deep at the bottom of this cave, there was a huge whale with a broken body. And this big whale shocked Han Fei. Is this a cloud whale? The 3rd chapter. Yesterday and today, I was laying the groundwork because these things have to be written eventually. If I don't write them, some settings can't continue. It's over today, and there won't be any tomorrow. Well, end of this chapter. Chapter 1384. Han Fei's first reaction was shock. Because in a sense, the cloud whale shouldn't be a sea monster. Han Fei had always thought that the cloud whale was the only one in this world, the loneliest and most peculiar whale in the world. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. Han Fei had never asked when the cloud whale appeared on the Scattered Stars Island. Why were they saved by others, and why were they living together? The old turtle couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. I seem to have seen this whale wandering in the sky outside your island. Han Fei's mind was racing. The yin-yang heaven was almost the same as the waterwood heaven. They were both blocked by the wall of death. The strength of the cloud whale on the Scattered Stars Island was actually not very strong. Although it ate a lot, it didn't grow any stronger. Because it didn't like to stay at low altitudes, it would occasionally pick up humans at low altitudes, except when it was on the Scattered Stars Island. Other times, it was shuttling through the clouds in the sky. Han Fei couldn't help wondering, isn't a whale a viviparous animal? Could it be that the cloud whale outside is this creature's baby? But Han Fei thought about it and felt that it was wrong. This cloud whale had been dead for a long time. Where the F***CK did this baby come from? Immediately, Han Fei didn't dive down at all but sat cross-legged in the water, focusing his attention on the black mist. The Gemini divine technique was interlinked. The black mist hiding in the old turtle's body asked casually, "Senior, let me ask you something. Do you know when the cloud whale on the Scattered Stars Island appeared? When I came back, I met the cloud whale and found that it had just entered the sea demon realm. After eating so many things, its strength didn't improve at all." The star turtle couldn't help but wonder, "Why do you ask this? Is the being down there related to the cloud whale?" Han Fei thought to himself, "Do you have to be so sensitive? And you've been suppressed here for so long. Don't you know what's down there?" However, Han Fei didn't disclose it but said bluntly, "Of course it has nothing to do with what's down there. It's not a matter of the same era. It's just that it's quite boring to stay here. It's good for us to chat. After all, the species of the cloud whale is rather special. Why do you think its ancestors passed down one kind of creature to the only one?" Hearing this, the star tortoise couldn't help but say, "Me, I'm not sure about the little cloud whale's ancestors. Come to think of it, it should be because of different living habits. After all, fish should live in the water. Why are they living in the sky?" Han Fei pretended to be surprised. "The cloud whale really has an ancestor?" The star tortoise said, "I don't know because I've been here for tens of thousands of years." However, the little cloud whale was indeed a rare creature. That was more than 1,800 years ago. At that time, I was undergoing my tribulation and broke through to the explorer realm of you humans. At that time, during the heavenly tribulation, the commander at that time caught the little cloud whale out of nowhere and said that he wanted to see how much of the dissipating heavenly tribulation power the little cloud whale could absorb. I want to keep it here. Han Fei was stunned. More than 1,800 years ago, Han Fei immediately said, "Why do I vaguely remember that it was only 800 years before the cloud whale appeared in the sight of human beings?" The star tortoise said, "That's right. At that time, the little cloud whale was too young and weak, so it was raised by Tang Bingyao as a pet. After 1,000 years, it finally returned to the Scattered Stars Island. However, the little cloud whale's talent might not be very good. After 1,000 years, it hasn't even reached the sea demon realm, and it's still a demon. Today, after another 800 years, the little cloud whale is still in the sea demon realm." Han Fei's lips twitched. The cloud whale was a legendary creature. It didn't make sense for it to grow up so slowly, did it? He was a little curious at the beginning, but he wasn't too curious at that time. But now, Han Fei felt that there must be a big secret behind it. Suddenly, Han Fei realized that there was another person involved in this matter, and that was the commander at that time. Han Fei asked, "Senior, is the commander still alive? Who is he?" The star tortoise said without hesitation, "Tang Bingyao. His full name is Tang Yin, and he's quite a gentle person. He's really talented. However, not long after I made the breakthrough, Tang Bingyao left and never came back." Tang Yin? Wow, Han Fei was shocked. Li Daxian and Tang Yin. These two were both people who dominated the Ideal Palace rankings. Sometimes Li Daxian ranked first on the Void Steel. Sometimes Tang Yin ranked first. He couldn't say for sure who was stronger between the two. However, the Thousand Star City didn't seem to know much about Li Daxian and Tang Yin, and no one could find out their origins. This should also have something to do with the memory loss in the Ideal Palace. However, Li Daxian's identity had been revealed. He was the patriarch of the Thug Academy, the fake Uncle Faceless. He was the patriarch of the Thug Academy, the legendary patriarch of the Thousand Star City. The world only knew his power, but not his name. Who could call him a patriarch? Li Tianshan had such an identity. Then, was Tang Yan's identity really just a commander? Was it so simple? When the star tortoise underwent the tribulation, Tang Yin took the little cloud whale to absorb the power of the lightning tribulation. Then, not long after, Tang Yin left. After 1,000 years, the cloud whale came back. It seemed to be a simple thing, but every step felt wrong. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Senior, didn't that Commander Tang Yin tell you about the origin of the cloud whale?" The star tortoise couldn't help but say, "He didn't have time to talk about this. At that time, when I was undergoing the tribulation, the earth shook and the Empyrean waterfall collapsed. It was very dangerous. I didn't have time to chat with Tang Bingyao. Later, after the tribulation, I was weak, so I fell into a deep sleep. The reason why the Empyrean waterfall you see now has such a huge waterfall is that it was moved here later. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. There was definitely something wrong with Tang Yen. The star tortoise said that during the tribulation, even the Empyrean waterfall collapsed. At that time, the little cloud whale was just brought here. Then it left for 1,000 years. Was this a coincidence? No, naturally. Han Fei didn't believe that it was a coincidence. It was just the most basic clue. Not just him. Even if a random person came here and saw the corpse of a cloud whale hidden under the king's pressure, they would definitely have the same reaction as him. To learn more about the cloud whale, there was a living cloud whale outside his island. Only with a living one would it be easy to trace it back. Han Fei rolled his eyes. By the way, Senior, is the king's corpse down there really a corpse? Is it possible that it's still alive? I feel that the pressure down there is too strong. I can't stand it. The star tortoise didn't know what was going on down there. When Han Fei asked, it answered, because it couldn't be more familiar with the pressure. If it weren't for the pressure of the king's corpse, the power of his soul would have penetrated it. The star tortoise said firmly, "It's definitely dead. It's definitely dead. That's the corpse of king. If it's half dead, it's very easy for it to absorb my vitality. How can I suppress it until now?" Han Fei thought to himself, it seems that the star tortoise doesn't know what happened down there. What happened up there is Tang Yan's business. If he asked the star tortoise about this, he might get some information, but not all of it. On the Scattered Stars Island, there should be records of the previous commanders. After all, there was a flowing line of soldiers and an iron marshal. Not a single person at the level of a commander would be a simple character. How could he not have any records for something? Han Fei didn't ask any more questions. If he had any questions, he just needed to keep them in mind. When he was free, he would check them. Han Fei sighed casually, changed the topic, and chatted with the star tortoise about spiritual energy dismantling. After all, the star tortoise's spiritual energy dismantling rate must have reached 70%. It wouldn't be bad if he learned it himself, right? Under the king's pressure, the real size of this guy was actually much larger than it looked from the outside. The barrier formed by the so-called king's pressure was more like a seal that isolated the two sides. This world was like a complete burial ground for corpses. Compared with the outside, the demonic chi here was more violent. However, for Han Fei's spiritual heritage that was beyond mortal heritage, the demonic chi couldn't do anything to him at all. This cloud whale's body was huge. It was 30,000 meters long, and it might even be longer than that. Han Fei smiled self-deprecatingly. He didn't believe it before, but his horizons were slowly broadened. The enormous dragons and the cloud whale as long as 10,000 meters had already told him that there were many such terrifying monsters outside. Just get used to it. Different from the floor covered with ultra-quality demonic stones, just now, there were many rare spiritual plants around the cloud whale's body. There were more than 1,000 of them, big and small. In addition, this king's body seemed to be protected by an invisible energy. Han Fei was proficient in arrays, but he couldn't tell what kind of array it was. However, sensing the pressure around him, Han Fei didn't feel that it was very strong. It seemed to be even weaker than in the blue mist. Besides, the giant corpse was right in front of him, waiting for him to enjoy it. However, Han Fei had never used a king's corpse before. Han Fei immediately said, "Old Yuan, what do you think this corpse is used for? To peel off its skin, pull out its tendons, cut off its flesh, and take its bones?" The old turtle couldn't help but say in disgust, "Do you have to be so cruel?" Han Fei said helplessly, "I'm just asking." The old turtle said unhurriedly, "I'm afraid this corpse won't be useful to you." "Huh?" The old turtle said, "The so-called king is called the Sea Expansion Realm. You humans call it the Sea Expansion Realm, and the sea demons call it the Deep Sea Giant Demon. Sea Expansion Realm is to create your own ocean. This is an independent space. Although this king died, it doesn't mean that the world he created will also perish. Do you understand what I mean? Huh? The king's portable space? Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. I never thought about taking the king's wealth. If this cloud whale's body does exist, what treasures will there be? Chapter 1385. Hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei was tempted. How much wealth would a king have? Sea expansion was to open up a unique ocean world. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei was quite curious. He didn't know what Forge the Universe was like. Han Fei had seen a small world. However, this didn't surprise him. After all, the sea-swallowing seashell and the sun-moon shell could both form their own spaces. Was the sea-swallowing seashell also the space of a king? In that case, there would be countless kings. As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, the old turtle said contemptuously, "The sea-swallowing seashell, the sun-moon shell, and the star shell are just their own characteristics. They collapse a space at the cost of their death. The size of the space is related to their strength when they were alive. Do you know where the masters of spirit weapons and divine weapons go?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Where?" Han Fei had thought about this question before. If he hadn't known about the Soul Sea, Han Fei felt that he wouldn't even know where his naturally endowed spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts went. Even the living places of contractual spiritual beasts were different from those of naturally endowed spiritual beasts. They didn't seem to be in the Soul Sea. The old turtle said, "Since you have even encountered the remains of a king today, I can tell you in advance. In fact, all creatures have a sea, and this sea can only be opened by the sea expansion realm. However, this doesn't mean that you can't use this sea without the sea expansion realm. For example, if you refine spiritual weapons and spiritual weapons with your essence blood, then the spiritual weapons and spiritual weapons will be stained with your origin, so you can naturally store them in that sea." Han Fei took a breath. "Where is the sea?" The old turtle said, "It's still in the chaos. You can also call it the Chaos Sea. I didn't make up this name. This is the guess of many strong masters. It's just that no one can really find the Chaos Sea." Han Fei nodded and thought to himself, "It's all a guess. What's there to say?" Han Fei said, "I just want to know, where is the sea expansion realm of this cloud whale?" The old turtle immediately said, "If I'm not mistaken, it should be in his remaining demonic essence." Han Fei was stunned for a moment. Demonic essence. Han Fei immediately lowered his head and looked at his abdomen. "The one in my dantian?" The old turtle pondered for a moment. "At first, I was also rather surprised by the demonic essence in your body. However, the demonic energy in your body seems to have been sealed by some sort of power. Why, you don't know." Han Fei had never mentioned this to the old turtle. It was given to him by the Snow God's Palace Master, Bing Xue Chuling. But up to now, Han Fei hadn't found any effect of the demonic essence. Other than giving him some help when he was cultivating the Yao transformation art, it had not been of any use after that. At this moment, after hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei suddenly realized that this was a world left by a king. He didn't study how to break the invisible energy on the surface of the cloud whale's body. On the contrary, Han Fei tried to dig up all the flowers and grass around Cloud Whale. All of the spirit fruits that could grow near the remains of a king were extraordinary, and they were all supreme grade. Furthermore, perhaps it was because the remnant of a king possessed boundless energy, but all of the spirit fruits here were energy fruits. There was not a single spirit fruit or poison fruit. Hiss! 7-color fiery lotus? Han Fei randomly dug up a spiritual plant, and information popped up in front of his eyes, which gave him a fright. Name 7-color fiery lotus. Introduction. It grows in a place of boundless energy and is generally the place where powerful creatures have died. It grows by absorbing their vitality and energy. It has the magical effect of improving physique and increasing energy. Level, heaven level, quality, ultra quality, contains spiritual energy 6, 46,000 points. Effect, if eaten directly, it can improve physique, cleanse the muscles and marrow, enhance vitality, and contain spiritual energy. It can be eaten repeatedly. Han Fei just glanced at a random one. Any random one here was a heaven-level ultra quality. It was not weak at all. However, there were more than 1,000 spiritual fruits here. Han Fei was overjoyed. With these energy fruits, it's almost certain that I'll have a golden body. Han Fei hurriedly threw the 7-color fiery lotus into Forge the Universe. Then, under the terrifying pressure, he buried his head in digging. 1, 2, 3. After digging dozens of spiritual fruits in a row, suddenly, when Han Fei was digging a purple leaf fruit, all of a sudden, a gray shadow emerged from the cloud whale's body and swept at Han Fei casually. Han Fei reacted very quickly. The moment he retreated, the embroidery needle was already in front of him. A wisp of gray, mist-like gas came crashing over. Clang! Chi! Chi! Han Fei retreated 7 or 8 meters and looked down his chest, where there was a burn more than 3 inches wide, and his skin was wrinkled. Huh! The old turtle said, "It's okay." When you dug the grass, the protective energy on the surface of its body was affected, and a little of it leaked out. Han Fei's face changed slightly. It has been dead for so long, but this little power can hurt me? The old turtle said, "I told you, don't guess the strength of a king. You seem to be extremely strong now, and you seem to be able to fight a beginner venerable. But so what? If you keep going forward, you will still be an ant. Even this broken body of a king is not something you can touch easily." Han Fei didn't refute. With a dark face, he carefully collected these spiritual fruits and spiritual plants. Only when he was stronger could he find his weakness. It took Han Fei half a day to carefully collect all the spiritual fruits and spiritual plants around the cloud whale. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Although he was swept by the escaping protective energy a dozen times, that force was not enough to knock him back, let alone really hurt him. But that force was not enough to knock him back, let alone really hurt him. It could be said that Han Fei had gained too much this time. Spirit awakening fluid, ultra-quality demonic stones, energy fruits. These 3 things were already unimaginable for countless people. At least, with these energy fruits, Han Fei felt that his indestructible golden body was stable. He just needed to wait and give himself a little more time. By then, his indestructible golden body would be phenomenal, and he would become a peak-level explorer, and his strength would immediately have a qualitative leap. Han Fei was excited at this moment. "Old Yuan, can I try to break this protective energy? You have absorbed so much chaotic energy. You must help me when necessary." The old turtle said, "Although this king has been dead for a long time, its protective energy is not something that ordinary people can break. To get its demonic essence, you have to break this protective energy first. Secondly, you have to prevent the king from playing tricks on its demonic essence." Han Fei said, "Although the pressure is heavy, it can't hurt me once I get used to it. After all, it is not a living creature. If I can't even resist it, why should I fight for opportunities? However, this protective energy, is it also a kind of energy?" The old turtle couldn't help but ask, "What do you want to do?" Han Fei thought for a moment and looked at his arm, which had been burnt to a pulp just now. He grinned. "You said that I have to gather the energy and wash it together in order to get enough violent power to polish my golden body? Look, isn't this? God is on my side." The old turtle was silent for a long time, and finally said, "If it's you, it may really work. After all, you know the spirit awakening technique." The old turtle didn't want to admit this fact. Han Fei's idea was very bold, using the protective energy of the king to polish his golden body. What a huge amount of energy it was. It shouldn't be a problem for him to polish his golden body. Once his golden body was formed, Han Fei's physical strength would definitely soar. Han Fei took a breath and thought to himself, "Sure enough, he who strikes first has the upper hand. What others can't touch doesn't mean Han Fei can't touch. Since you all choose me, I'll show you how strong I am." Then Han Fei opened his mouth and inhaled. The art of swallowing directly absorbed the energy from all directions into his body. As a unique technique left by the war giants, the art of swallowing was very likely to be listed as a secret by the Chow family of the Thousand Star City. At this moment, Han Fei took this opportunity to suck out the protective energy on the surface of the huge cloud whale's body, and like a spiral tornado, it covered his whole body. Buzz, buzz, buzz in just an instant. Han Fei's skin quickly turned red, then wrinkled, torn, and melted. The terrifying and scorching power, which seemed to contain a trace of the cloud whale's blood, penetrated into Han Fei's flesh and blood, and penetrated into Han Fei's brain. Oh, at that moment, Han Fei felt as if his brain had been poured into boiling lava. He was about to explode. Swish! The heavenly awakening technique arrived. Although this scorching energy was not like the dragon origin chi, it was still extremely domineering. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't have used the heavenly awakening technique to protect himself. In this case, the holy light technique couldn't keep up with the damage to Han Fei's flesh and internal organs at all. At this moment, when Han Fei swallowed the energy, he felt as if his internal organs were burning, which was more painful than any time before. As for why Han Fei could still take it, that was because of the invincible will. Han Fei was so furious that his hair stood on end. This time, he had to condense a golden body no matter what, so that he wouldn't have to suffer this inhuman pain in the future. Chilla, Han Fei's flesh cracked, blurred, melted, and disintegrated again and again. The vitality generated by the indestructible body could no longer meet Han Fei's needs. If he didn't use the heavenly awakening technique, Han Fei felt that he would probably be burnt into a skeleton, or maybe only a golden skeleton would be left. Once, twice, in the outside world, on the scattered stars island, in front of the ancient battlefield, all the venerables looked at the Empyrean waterfall. At the same time, on an unknown sea where the 10,000 demon valley was, one venerable after another appeared. Can't the scattered stars island suppress it anymore? In the 10,000 demon valley, a sea demon venerable roared. Blue feather. I'm told that the pearls produced in the Sea of Pearls are extremely important wealth for human society. I order you to lead 10,000 elite soldiers and 100,000 manfish to destroy that place. Chapter 1386. Han Fei felt that magma had been poured into his head. Oh no, his flesh and blood had turned into magma. The terrifying energy was washing his body crazily. If Ren Tianfen were here, he would have been dumbfounded. Before reaching the venerable level, you can at most cultivate half a golden body, which is already very rare. Why? Do you still have the confidence to cultivate the indestructible body to great success? Han Fei really didn't want to feel the feeling of burning his bones and shattering his bones into fine sand again. At this moment, the protective energy of the entire cloud whale had been reduced by half, and it was fading and flowing into Han Fei's body. As for Han Fei himself, although he had the apocalyptic divine technique, his golden body was half exposed at this moment. However, right now, his golden body was half exposed. On top of his head, his skull was golden, resplendent, and dazzling. The golden body seemed to have been formed, but Han Fei's flesh and blood seemed to be unable to bear the power of the golden body. Every time it healed, it would rot and collapse again. After experiencing inhuman pain, Han Fei had slowly woken up at this moment and realized the seriousness of the problem. His golden body had been formed, and his meridians were as clean as glass and intact, but his flesh and blood were a bit weak. It seemed that his bones and meridians couldn't bear it. The old turtle roared, "You can't stop now. Your golden body has been formed, but the power of your flesh and blood can't match your bones and meridians, so your body has been collapsing and peeling off." Han Fei had no time to listen to the old turtle, because he found that the Gemini divine technique couldn't bear it anymore. The impact was too strong, and the Gemini divine technique wasn't a real external incarnation. So at this moment, he was about to collapse. Han Fei gritted his teeth. He couldn't leave this place at this moment. Even if he had thousands of ultra-quality energy fruits, if he refined his golden body in the Empyrean waterfall, he would be surrounded by a dozen venerables, half of whom were enemies. For that reason alone, he couldn't go out. Inside the 1,000-mark star turtle, the black fog shivered. The star turtle asked, "What's wrong with you?" Han Fei said, "No, the other half of my body is in danger down there. I have to return to the original body." The star turtle said in surprise, "If you completely go in, you can't come out. But it doesn't matter. It's only a few months anyway, as long as you don't die." "I won't die," Han Fei thought to himself. That's the only way. Although he had an agreement with Shuesh and Qi, he was indeed in big trouble at the moment. Perhaps his complete body would be able to withstand the situation of his flesh and blood collapsing. After a while, the body of black fog entered without hesitation. Although Han Fei's soul was in great pain, he still maintained a trace of sobriety. If something went wrong with him this time, not to mention becoming a king, even living would be an extravagant hope. Now that such a huge commotion had occurred in the remains of the cloud whale, the outside world must be in chaos. He wondered if the sea demons had taken any action. There must be. However, Han Fei couldn't provide any help to the outside world now. Woo! I can use Goldie. I can pass a message to Goldie through the old turtle. This way, I can also know the situation outside. If the sea demons come to snatch the cloud whale, perhaps I can hide under the star tortoise and ambush them. In a daze, Han Fei thought of a lot of things. Swish, a moment later, the body of the black fog rushed over, and the Gemini divine arts were instantly lifted. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Phew, Han Fei had just breathed a sigh of relief, and the power of the collapse of his body seemed to be getting better. Han Fei clearly felt that his strength seemed to be transitioning and merging. However, just after 3 breaths, Pucci, his flesh and blood collapsed again. Han Fei's body still couldn't support the terrifying muscles and bones. F***CK, is there no end to this? The old turtle said, "Your problem is not that you have 2 bodies. The foundation of your body is the same. So even if your other half returns, it will only completely stabilize the golden body. Your fleshly body will also collapse." F***CK, why didn't you say so earlier? Han Fei said helplessly. "Old Yuan, did you deliberately set me up?" The old turtle said, "But if your other half doesn't come, your golden body will not be complete and will only accelerate the collapse of your flesh and blood. At least your golden body is stabilized. With the golden body, even if your flesh and blood are gone, you can actually live." Han Fei thought the old turtle was talking about the undead creature, because during the Water-Wood Heavenly Island battle, he had fought with the golden skeleton. If that wasn't an undying creature, then what was it? And the thug patriarch, Li Daxian. As soon as he made his move, white skeletons blotted out the sky. It was as if a great devil had appeared out of nowhere. He didn't want to become like that. Han Fei asked, "Is there no other way?" The old turtle said leisurely, "I'm afraid you can only continue to cultivate and let this energy continue to wash your body and polish your flesh and blood strength. Of course, this may consume your vitality. I'm afraid it will take at least 2,000 years. Han Fei, puff. Han Fei was infuriated by the old turtle's words, and blood spurted out all over his body. F***CK, I just replenished my vitality not long ago. In order to break through to the peak of the golden body, I consumed at least another 200 years of vitality. But now you're asking me for 2,000 years of vitality? Are you kidding me? Roar. My body can contain all rivers." Han Fei activated the Tao seed and imagined that his body was invincible, trying to forcibly contain the muscles and bones. Sure enough, as soon as this technique was used, Han Fei's flesh and blood no longer collapsed. Although his body was full of cracks and the violent protective energy was still washing his body, it didn't disperse his flesh and blood. Phew, Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, my Tao is awesome. With just a thought, I actually stopped the crisis of flesh and blood collapse. The old turtle couldn't help but be surprised. Are you forcibly condensing your body with your Tao? That's interesting. Although this technique doesn't last long, I'm afraid there are few people in the world who can do this with their Tao alone. Han Fei said angrily, "Heh, if you don't have an idea, you'd better shut up." Of course, Han Fei knew that this kind of fictitious power could only last for a limited time. If he wanted his flesh and blood to completely wrap his muscles and bones, it would probably take a long time to polish them. Han Fei thought, if only this Tao could always be integrated into my flesh and blood. With this idea, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Old Yuan, can the Tao and flesh and blood be integrated? The old turtle didn't even think about it and immediately said, Of course it can. For example, the body of this cloud whale is surrounded by mist, which is the result of the dissipation of the Tao. Otherwise, do you think the pure coercion of a king can suppress you? Han Fei was overjoyed and was about to continue to ask, but he heard the old turtle continue to say, However, the integration of the Tao is something that can only be done in the Pioneer Sea state. You can't do it now. Your flesh and blood can't even support the golden body. How can you talk about the Tao? If the Tao is really integrated into your body, I'm afraid that your flesh and blood will immediately explode, your muscles and bones will collapse, and you will die. Hearing this, Han Fei's heart sank. If the Tao can't do it, what about the Tao? The old turtle was stunned by Han Fei's question. The Tao and the Tao naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The Tao was just a kind of understanding of the world and one's own talent at the sea spirit realm. It could be regarded as a transition to the Tao. But to integrate the Tao into one's flesh and blood, the old turtle had never thought about this problem. After all, there was no need to do this at all when one reached the king's realm. Although he wasn't clear, as a strong master, the old turtle had a rough evaluation in his heart. It is reasonable to say that it is possible. However, if the Tao is integrated into your body, the Tao will collapse. You have to devour this nomological law. A gleam of light flashed in Han Fei's eyes. At the beginning, the reason why he became the law enforcer was that he was walking on the road of body refining. With the 108 desolate god body, the indestructible body, and the law enforcer, there was only one word for him: hard. It turned out that he was indeed very hard. A pair of iron fists were invincible, and he walked freely in the thousand-star city. At that time, he didn't know what law he should enforce. He just simply felt that he wanted to achieve the strongest body. Wasn't that the Vajra body? But now, the power of law enforcer seemed to have obviously deviated from his Tao. His Tao tended to create something out of nothing, but the power of law enforcer was the Vajra body. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately shouted, glaring king. However, there was the suppression of the remains of the king here. Although Han Fei's body emitted golden light, how could he use it? However, Han Fei didn't panic. The Tao was the Tao, a kind of rhythm between heaven and earth. This kind of Tao was created by him and integrated into his body. Couldn't he eat this wisp of Tao? At this moment, the Tao was suppressed in Han Fei's body and couldn't get out at all. Want to swallow it? That should be possible. However, how to swallow the Tao? Han Fei conveyed this thought to the old turtle. Now his body was almost out of control. Although he could see the power of the Tao, he didn't know how to swallow it. The old turtle said, This requires your Tao heart to be strong. Break this Tao first, and then you can integrate it into your body. Hearing this, Han Fei pondered for a while and activated the Tao seed. Flesh and blood like worms. Sacrifice the Tao, swallow. After all, Han Fei's flesh and blood could easily be separated from his bones. Although Han Fei hadn't done it before, Han Fei was confident that he could do it. Puff, puff, puff. In an instant, the surface of Han Fei's body collapsed, and his flesh and blood exploded everywhere. The half-golden body, with collapsed internal organs, stood in front of the giant cloud whale, still absorbing a huge amount of energy. Chomp, chomp! At that moment, Han Fei turned his body into a worm. His flesh and blood were shredding the golden light, and an extremely hard little golden man of laws was instantly torn to pieces under his own flesh and blood. And at this moment, under the collapse of his flesh and blood, Han Fei unexpectedly found 3 kinds of strange traces left. One was a black light, flashing in the flesh and blood. Han Fei had seen this black light more than once. It also appeared when he awakened his spirit, but then it appeared one after another and couldn't be found. Until now, Han Fei didn't know what it was. The other one turned out to be a small bottle. It didn't appear in his flesh and blood, but at the moment when the Tao collapsed just now, it seemed to fall out of a wisp of his soul. Hiss, isn't this F** Ket up? When did a small bottle appear in his divine soul? The last one was a bead. Han Fei could recognize at a glance that it was the wind bead, the bead of the phantom glass wings. Although his body collapsed, Han Fei's golden body was still intact. He reached out and grabbed the small bottle. The moment Han Fei grabbed the small bottle, the scene in his soul suddenly changed, and he seemed to be in a dark void. A figure that Han Fei hadn't seen for a long time appeared. Is that the Giant King? Han Fei said in surprise. Master. Chapter 1387. The appearance of the Giant King was beyond Han Fei's expectation. What the F***, this is too horrifying. In this time, after 100,000 years, next to the corpse of a strange cloud whale king, he saw the Giant King. But then, Han Fei realized that something was wrong. He had only discovered the Giant King when he held the small bottle. Could it be that the Giant King had hidden his soul in this small bottle? The Giant King said leisurely, Disciple, I knew that one day you would discover the secret of the soul. It's ridiculous that the Beast King, the Heavenly Crystal, and the Water Fairy thought they could teach you a lesson. I'm different. I'm very smart. No matter what, I'm smarter than monkeys, birds, flowers, and plants. Han Fei was dumbfounded. With a thought, the apocalyptic divine technique descended. Han Fei's flesh and blood were recovering into a body, and the golden skeleton was also a body. At this time, the golden skeleton said, Master, I'm confused. What's going on? The old turtle said, Idiot, it's just that someone left a soul mark in your soul. It doesn't have a mind of its own, and it can only repeat those words. Sure enough, the Giant King laughed and said, Little Wong Han, are you surprised to see me again? But don't get too excited. When you see me, I'm afraid I've turned into bones and dust. Who knows how many years later it will be. This is just a divine soul imprint that I left behind. Han Fei sighed faintly. Damn, when did this happen? Why didn't I know? The Giant King hummed. Make a long story short. Let me finish explaining things first. Little Wong Han, listen carefully. This half bottle of blood is the real bloodline of the god of war, the blood of a god. It's a pity that I got a whole bottle of it back then. But after trying, I still couldn't walk on the path of the god of war and follow in the footsteps of the god of war. It's a pity. This should be because I'm not talented enough to absorb the bloodline of the god of war. Little Wong Han, I'll leave this half a bottle of blood of the god of war to you. You must help me find a decent inheritance. Or, if you can use it yourself, it's okay. This is the glory of the war god. It cannot be tarnished. The Giant King used nearly 1,000 words to describe the greatness of the god of war, which made Han Fei's blood freeze. Who would have thought that this Giant King was a die-hard fan of the god of war? Han Fei was speechless and complained crazily in his heart, Master, don't you know that I'm also a body practitioner? You still want to leave the god's blood to others? I'm a little worried about your IQ. The old turtle was shocked. Wait a minute. Kid, you crossed the river of time. What kind of master did you have? Why does it have the blood of the gods? Han Fei said, maybe it was worshipped when the gods were still alive? At that time, it was popular to offer sacrifices. Ridiculous. The old tortoise replied, how could a dignified god give blood so easily? Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei immediately remembered what the Giant King said before. He said that if the war god was still safe and sound, the two of them could chat through the sacrificial firewall. Han Fei didn't know whether it was true or not. However, if the Giant King said so, there might be some basis. Maybe the god of war was also a fool. In any case, the essence blood of the god of war had already fallen into his hands. This was the most awesome thing he had seen in his life, except for the little calabash. This was the real god's blood. After the Giant King finished talking about business, he began to chat. He said, Disciple, I don't know how many years you can go back in time. However, if you have a chance, you must take care of the war giants. Compared with the Beast clan, the Sky Clan, and the Demonoplant clan, we have the least people. I heard that you little human beings are very fertile. Why can't we, who are a little bigger, have children? It's really strange. The giant king rambled. I don't know what the future will be like. Our 100,000 mountains has a vast territory and many strong masters. There will always be some clansmen left, you know. Our war giants are not very smart, so you'll have to pay more attention in the future. The more the giant king chattered, the darker Han Fei's face became. Han Fei was helpless and thought, Master, there may be traces of the Beast Clan and the Sky Clan. Master Shuaixian is still alive. I can't find anyone from your war giants at all. The giant king gradually disappeared in this kind of chatter. It turned out that a venerable was still a venerable. He didn't have the power of a king, so he could only leave a small movie for Han Fei. During the giant king's chatter, Han Fei's flesh and blood collapsed again, and the apocalyptic divine art came again. Of course, he couldn't go on like this. He had to solve this problem quickly. Han Fei couldn't help asking, Old Yuan, can I drink this god's blood? The giant king said leisurely, How would I know? I've never seen God's blood in my life. You're lucky to have someone hide the God's blood in your divine soul. Han Fei said, Then don't you have any suggestions? If I die, you will die. The old turtle said lazily, Of course, God's blood is good, but I'm afraid you can't bear it. However, I would like to ask, is your teacher also a king? Han Fei said, No, my teacher is a peak-level venerable. Otherwise, he would have lived to this day. The old turtle said bluntly, No. Han Fei asked, Huh? The old turtle said, If he is a venerable, why can't he use the king's blood essence? Are you bragging? Even if he is a king, he doesn't dare to use God's blood easily, let alone a peak-level venerable. Han Fei was taken aback. What do you mean? The old turtle said, Well, your golden body has been formed. In terms of physique, I'm afraid you have also reached the level of a peak-level venerable. If your teacher can use it, you can naturally use it too. Maybe when the god bestowed the god's blood, he diluted it or added some kind of restriction so that the god's blood won't hurt the venerable. However, to be safe, I think you should use a little bit first. Hearing this, Han Fei found it reasonable. Just when Han Fei was about to activate the god of war's blood essence, he heard the old turtle say, Why don't you melt your wings too? Anyway, these wings seem to only have the meaning of a secret method for you. After melting, these will not disappear, but will enhance a trace of bloodline power. In the future, if you give birth to children, they may inherit your bloodline power. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Do you mean that what is in my bloodline, my children may inherit it? The old turtle nodded. That makes sense. The bloodline of every living being was actually quite heterogeneous. Maybe in each bloodline, there are thousands of different kinds of power. Most of them are in a sealed state, and a few have already been awakened at the beginning of their birth. Han Fei blinked his eyes. The phantom glass wings are actually quite beautiful. The old turtle, Han Fei knew that the old turtle was right, because he was not the only one who had done this. In fact, many people had done this. Once they passed the level of law enforcer, they would melt their wings and become a part of their power. And Han Fei certainly didn't care about the power provided by the phantom glass wings. The phantom glass wings were best at speed and secret methods. Even their flashing ability couldn't be compared with the agility of wind. This fusion was simple. With a thought from Han Fei, the wind god bead floated in the air. With a bang, it shattered into powder and was wrapped in a mist of blood. It seemed that he had done a trivial thing. Han Fei didn't waste any time, but directly unscrewed the small bottle containing the god of war's bloodline. As soon as the bottle was opened, a surge of blood chi rose into the sky. The terrifying protective energy on the surface of the cloud whale collapsed the moment the bottle was opened. The old turtle said, This is the suppression of the origin. It doesn't matter. Get a little god of war's essence blood and then quickly close it. The old turtle thought to himself, if this is really the bloodline of a god, then Han Fei probably won't be able to resist it. If Han Fei can't resist it, the old turtle will absorb it for him. It shouldn't be a problem. He had to be careful of this little calabash and not compete with him. Han Fei was also very careful. After all, this was the essence blood of a god. He had to be careful. He took out a small drop the size of a fingernail and dripped it into his collapsed bloodline. At this moment, his law enforcer ability was broken and swallowed by the bloodline. His flesh and blood showed the color of the power of law enforcer and also flickered with golden light, but it was not the same thing as a golden body. At this moment, these powers were flowing into his flesh and blood and had been gradually fusing. When this god, blood, dripped in, suddenly the golden light shone brightly and the collapsing flesh and blood immediately showed signs of stabilizing. And in an instant, it was stabilized. Apocalyptic divine technique. This time, Han Fei's flesh and blood finally wrapped around his muscles and bones, no longer collapsing. He didn't know whether it was because of the law enforcer ability or the essence blood of the god of war. In short, Han Fei's body became more stable, and his flesh and blood became more solid. Han Fei didn't feel any pain in his flesh and blood. He just felt that everything was reasonable. His flesh and blood recovered, and his skin grew again. As if fearing that his flesh and blood were not strong enough, Han Fei took out another small drop of the essence blood of the god of war and dripped it into his healing flesh and blood. This time, Han Fei only felt that his strength had increased greatly. His body was even stronger, and energy was surging in his flesh and blood. Fortunately, the protective energy of the cloud whale was broken by the blood of the god of war. Otherwise, a large amount of energy would have rushed into Han Fei's body. Han Fei's body was still slightly fatter, which made him realize that he seemed to have eaten too much. Han Fei activated the void fishing technique and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't use more. Otherwise, if he used another drop, he might explode. At this time, Han Fei clearly felt a slight sigh, and then he heard the old turtle say, "You scared me. I thought this was really the essence blood of a god. It turns out to be emperor blood." Han Fei was dumbfounded. Emperor blood? The old turtle vowed solemnly. "Of course, do you think you can swallow the blood of gods now? Since you can swallow it, this is at most emperor blood, and it may be diluted emperor blood. Otherwise, that small drop just now would have been enough for you. It seems that the so-called god of war your teacher mentioned is just a venerable emperor." Han Fei didn't have any special feelings about gods, so he said, "What's wrong with a venerable emperor? A venerable emperor is also an immortal level expert. That's still much stronger than you, okay?" Chapter 1388. The god of war was not a god. Just now, Han Fei thought that it was an orthodox god who might be able to give him an oracle or something. It turned out that the god of war was an eternal emperor. But even so, Han Fei could only use 2 small drops of the essence blood of the god of war with his phenomenal success golden body. When the emperor blood entered his body, Han Fei clearly felt that his flesh and blood were stabilized. However, Han Fei had a new discovery. This so-called emperor blood seemed to be competing with the original golden blood in his body. Han Fei thought to himself, no matter how powerful other people's blood is, it's still other people's blood. You could be used by me and become a part of my energy. But you want to swallow my original blood and replace it? That's a joke. Swallow it. Han Fei activated his Tao seed, and his blood was surging. The golden blood crazily tore the scarce, but extremely high-quality essence blood of the god of war like bugs. At this moment, the demonic energy in Han Fei's body was surging. Almost every 10 minutes, 2 or 3 ultra-quality demonic stones would shatter. Fortunately, Han Fei had obtained so many ultra-quality demonic stones at once. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to last long with his original reserves. An hour later, Han Fei felt that the essence blood of the god of war hadn't been refined yet, but the power of his phantom glass wings had been completely swallowed and melted into his flesh and soul. Another 6 hours later, his law enforcer ability was completely devoured. Han Fei's skin grew back, becoming quite fair, and he looked much more handsome. His flesh and blood were completely stabilized. Less than half of the new essence blood of the god of war had been refined. After another 12 hours, the essence blood of the god of war, was finally absorbed. At this time, Han Fei's body was extremely short of energy. When he swallowed the energy around him again, Han Fei found that the cloud whale's protective energy was already insufficient. His body seemed to be a bit too strong, which was the benefit of swallowing the blood of the god of war. In an instant, Han Fei realized that sometimes it wasn't a good thing to be too strong. If he didn't have the energy supply now, he might be swallowed by it, apart from anything else, just from his body size. In the short span of half a day, he had become fat because he had absorbed too much energy. His whole body had almost turned into a ball. Then, due to the lack of energy from the outside world, he became thin and shriveled again, turning into a bag of bones. Han Fei felt that the trend would be irreversible in another quarter of an hour. With a thought from Han Fei, a dozen energy fruits floated in front of him. Phew! In the outside world, Han Fei had disappeared for 3 days. From the first day, he returned to the Scattered Stars Island, when he killed a peak-level, Tao-seeking cultivator with his fist, and swept 100 kilometers of the sea with his sword. The whole island had been seething. Many people speculated that Han Fei had a great opportunity and became a peerless expert. However, Han Fei only appeared for a moment and then disappeared. He did not appear in any of the celebration banquets. Those who knew the inside story even looked at the Empyrean waterfall where Jiuyin Ling was. At this moment, Jiuyin Ling was still in her old courtyard. Next to her yard, Han Fei's yard was still there, but it was surrounded by fog and seemed to be isolated by an array. In Jiuyin Ling's courtyard, 2 girls were drinking tea. Jiuyin Ling was still elegant, but she was less otherworldly. The woman opposite her seemed absent-minded. She had a pair of hanging braids on her temples, and there were 2 curly bangs in front of the braids, presenting a beautiful arc. At this moment, the woman was holding the teacup in her hand, and her eyes were a little dull. Jiuyin Ling couldn't help but say, "Xiaoyu, you don't seem to like eating much recently. Are you too lazy to cook?" Hearing Jiuyin Ling's words, Xiaoyu couldn't help but come back to herself. "Huh. Oh, I just feel that ordinary ingredients are already useless. No matter how delicious the dishes are, they can't be tasted. My spiritual heritage and talent are not as good as yours. If I don't pay attention to my cultivation, how can I become an expert in the future?" Jiuyin Ling smiled and said, "Xiaoyu, you're already very good. Even with a level 6 or level 7 spiritual heritage, I dare not say that I can surpass you in cultivation speed. You're just short of time." Xiaoyu shook her head slightly. "No, I know what I'm capable of. Even with a great opportunity, my spiritual heritage was only upgraded by 1 level in a life-and-death situation. Compared to most of you, I'm still far behind." Jiuyin Ling raised her head, looked at the place surrounded by clouds not far away, and said lightly, "If he were here, he would definitely say that this is all nonsense. Spiritual heritage can only determine a person's aptitude, but hard work can also be a kind of talent." Xiaoyu curled her lips and asked curiously, "Xiaojiu, did he really kill a venerable?" "Yes." Xiaoyu couldn't help but support her chin. "A venerable, a legendary super expert. I've been on the Scattered Stars Island for so long, but I've only seen a few of them. Even if I saw one occasionally, I only caught a glimpse of a figure from afar. What does it look like? I couldn't even see it clearly. I'm afraid that people of this realm only appear in stories in our village, right?" Jiuyin Ling was actually not much better than Xiaoyu. Although she was born in the Thousand Star City and had seen venerable powerhouses fighting a venerable, that was still unimaginable for her. In the past, everyone said that Jiuyin Ling's cultivation speed was unparalleled. But now, Han Fei could kill a venerable in the blink of an eye. What kind of cultivation speed was this? Xiaoyu suddenly said, "Let's not talk about him. Xiaojiu, when are you going to transcend the tribulation? You're already so strong now. You can definitely transcend the tribulation, right?" Jiuyin Ling still shook her head. "At this point, I finally know that transcending the tribulation is not so easy. I'm not a body cultivator, so I can only resist it with the power of laws and the Tao of 9 sounds. In fact, when these are all at the extreme, peak-level law enforcers can still become stronger, but they have to use enough energy to polish their bodies. However, with my physique, I need to be at least twice as strong to have the ability to transcend the tribulation. Xiaoyu couldn't help but stick out her tongue. That's too difficult. However, Xiaoyu's heart did a flip. Her physique was considered extremely strong among those in the same realm. After practicing the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies, few people in the entire Scattered Stars Island could surpass her in terms of physique. Xiaoyu felt that she had already mastered this great technique that Han Fei gave her. Over the years, although she had exchanged for several other types of body tempering techniques, she felt that they were much worse than the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies. Xiaoyu thought that at least Jiuyin Ling didn't know this body tempering technique. Now, even if she wanted to learn it, the effect wouldn't be as good as before, although it wasn't useless. That was the foundation laid in the early stage. It was quite difficult to change it now. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, above the Empyrean waterfall, a conch sounded. A law enforcer controlled a boat to come and shouted, "All members of the Empyrean waterfall are marching to the Sea of Pearls. The army of sea demons is coming. Reinforce them quickly." Hum, hum, hum oars burst out, and in the blink of an eye, 100 people gathered on the boat. "Big Yellow, come back," Granny Een shouted, and a yellow figure flew to the sky and the ground. In an instant, it passed above Jiuyin Ling's house. Seeing this, Xiaoyu immediately said, "Xiaojiu, I have to return to the team. Be careful." Jiuyin Ling also said solemnly, "Okay." It couldn't be simple that the entire Empyrean waterfall was mobilized. Although there were many experts on the Scattered Stars Island, including many peak-level hidden fishers and law enforcers, those who could live in the Empyrean waterfall were all extraordinary. Even though Jiuyin Ling said that her physique was not strong enough, when she really entered the battlefield, few people could resist her when she used the seal. Xiaoyu returned to the team, only to see fishing boats and teams all over the sky. Tens of thousands of hanging fishers and 7 or 8 teams of 100 hidden fishers flew past. Swish, swish, swish. The fishing boats flew away, leaving clouds of mist in the sky, exploding and leaving white marks all over the sky. Of course, Xiaoyu quickly caught up and returned to her team. At this moment, Jing'er, who had been stuffing food on the Scattered Stars Island, was stunned. She had never seen such a scene before. In the past, she knew that Han Fei had fishing boats and heard that there were many fishing boats in the Yin-Yang Heaven. However, she never expected that everyone here had fishing boats, and everyone could fly in the sky and swim in the sea. Even the hanging fishers had their own fishing boats. Although the speed of the fishing boats was not fast, they were very rare. Squeak! Jing'er held 7 or 8 skewers in her hand, and all kinds of snacks were in her hand. While looking at the grand scene in the sky, she sighed. The Yin-Yang Heaven is really at war. I've only just arrived, but I've already fought several battles. This time, it seems to be extraordinary again. But why hasn't Han Fei come out yet? Jing'er naturally knew that Han Fei had gone to the Empyrean waterfall, and she also felt that there seemed to be something under the old turtle's body. However, this was the Yin-Yang Heaven's business, which was also Han Fei's business, so she could only watch. Quickly playing with the skewers in her hand, Jing'er curled her lips. Although it's delicious, it's not as good as the ones I make myself. It seems that Han Fei was right. His cooking skills are indeed unparalleled. Gulp! With that, Jing'er took out a row of cups of Liahua liquor out of nowhere, and the cups were still steaming with flames. He saw Jing'er pouring one cup after another into her mouth. "Ah, this is interesting." At the same time, in a certain club, a waiter cursed, "If there's a war, there's a war. Why are you stealing liquor? Fine, if you die outside, it'll be worth it." The Sea of Pearls. Hundreds of thousands of sea demons were coming. The Scattered Stars Island must have noticed it. When they were still more than 200,000 kilometers away, someone had already sensed them. At this moment, fishing boats were flying to the Scattered Stars Island from the Pearl Divers port. After all, most of the Pearl Divers were disabled. Although they could fight, the odds of them dying were high. Some of the bolder Pearl Divers made up their minds. We can't be disabled forever. Let's try our best. Another 3 days passed. Except for the clams in the sea, the entire Pearl Divers port was empty. It was foreseeable that the currency of the Thousand-Star City would change no matter what the result of this war was. On this day, the sea was stormy and surging. The sky was no longer clear, and the sea was dim. In the middle of the raging waves, more than 50,000 people had set up dozens of arrays around the Pearl Divers port. Different from the Sea Demon's March, human beings had 5 major professions. Apart from professions, there were organizations such as the Guild of Fishers, the Pioneer Group, and the Dark Hunter Legion. At this moment, they had already been set up. An explorer roared. "Where are they? Why haven't they come back?" An explorer responded, "No, the Sea Demon's attack this time is very resolute. The Scattered Stars Island is surrounded again. Countless sea creatures are surrounding the island." Shui Shenqi stepped out of the void. "Don't panic. Elder Bing Yun, there are many worms on the west coast of the Scattered Stars Island. Please guard there and prevent the enemies venerable from taking advantage of us." The beautiful woman was nowhere to be seen. She said leisurely, "Okay." Shui Shenqi said again, "Elder Six Swords, the east of the Scattered Stars Island, is on the line with the ancient battlefield. Please cooperate with Elder Jian Sanxing in case the enemy's venerable attacks." "No problem." The sword light disappeared, and Elder Six Swords had fled. Shui Shenqi said again, "Master Chow, you have to guard the twisted jungle, but it's easy to defend and difficult to attack. I'm afraid that the enemy's venerable attacks. Please guard it." The venerable of the Chow family simply said, "Okay." On the other side, as soon as the venerable of the Chow family left, a venerable of the Yi family said, "Hey, they're all defending. Are we going to fight here?" Yang Kuan also said, "General Shui, isn't your arrangement a bit biased?" Sun Baisheng also said, "Arranging the venerables of our big families to fight on the front line? It's indeed inappropriate." Shui Shenqi's eyes turned cold. "We're facing a great enemy. I hope you can pay attention to your words. The venerables are only there to contain the enemy and rarely take action. Don't ruin our morale. Otherwise, I'll kill him even if I lose the Sea of Pearls." Chapter 1389. Shui Shenqi could be said to be a governor. This was not a title that could be conferred by the big families or the 7 major sects in the Thousand-Star City. It was earned in a real war. None of the people who could be the supreme commander were simple. They all fought their way out of a sea of blood. Ordinary people could only stay on the Scattered Stars Island for 4 to 8 years. During this period, there was a very high probability of death. If they didn't die, many of them would apply to return to the villages and towns to teach and educate the people after their service. However, generally speaking, those who could live for 7 or 8 years on the Scattered Stars Island were either peak-level hidden fishers or law enforcers. Among them, many people had long been used to life on the Scattered Stars Island. Why did they suddenly return to the villages and towns to teach and educate the people? They weren't used to it. Shui Shenqi scolded them coldly, not giving face to these big families at all. He said, "I don't care what status you have in your families in the Thousand-Star City. However, now that you're on the Scattered Stars Island, you have to listen to me. If you don't want to, leave and never appear on the Scattered Stars Island again in the future. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." The Supreme Commander was so majestic. The eyes of the 2 explorers behind him were cold. Even at this moment, even if they had to fight against the 4 venerables, they still dared to do so. Yang Kuan's face turned red. As a venerable, he was taught a lesson by a junior. How could he bear it? But when he was about to speak, he heard Chu Qing's voice. "Okay, don't fight over this matter. The fate of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island is very complicated. They are all figures personally selected by the commander-level powerhouses. Similarly, in addition to the inheritance of positions, there is also the inheritance of a powerful sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Even in a one-on-one battle, Shui Shenqi is not someone you can deal with alone." Hearing this, Yang Kuan was slightly shocked. However, he still snorted and went into the void. In fact, Shui Shenqi never expected to use these people. The wild ambitions of the aristocratic families were as clear as day. If he treated them politely, he would probably be bullied to death. Shueishenqi also snorted coldly. Chu Qing, Yi Kai, hide in the void. If the other party's mid-level venerables don't come out, you two don't need to take action. Yang Kun, Sun Baisheng, the two of you will hold the fort. If there is a battle between venerables, you must take the lead and do not shirk your responsibilities. Shueishenqi looked arrogant, and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. If I want to deal with you, then I'll let you hold the line openly. Let me ask you this, do you dare to not do so? In the vast ocean, a war that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles with less than 200,000 people was actually not a big one at all. Of course, no one would be stupid enough to split up and fight. After the initial confrontation, the battlefield would be pulled apart. Some people would be led further and further away. The hanging fishers, hidden fishers, law enforcers, explorers, and venerables all had their own battlefields, and there would also be experts supervising the battles to prevent certain unfair things from happening. Just like Han Fei, he charged into the battlefield of hidden fishers with the combat power of a venerable. A casual slap could kill a group of people. Therefore, in the previous battle, the sea demons really lost unjustly. The supervising powerhouse was killed by Han Fei with a single punch. Even the venerable big demon, watching on the side, couldn't escape Han Fei's hands. Although Han Fei broke the rules in that battle, it was enough to show the value of a strong expert. A true powerhouse could completely rely on the strength of a single person to determine the outcome of a battle. This was the 9th day after Han Fei came back and disappeared. The Scattered Stars Island had already entered the highest state of alert. At this critical moment, the Logistics Division had also participated in the deployment of frontline supplies. Except for the twisted jungle, the entire coastline was guarded every kilometer. As long as there were sea demons attacking the island, troops would be mobilized. Although the Scattered Stars Island was small, it was still nearly 2,000 kilometers long and could accommodate millions of people. Just the daily population of the island was about 1 million. Because of the rotation system and multiple organizations, the total population of the Scattered Stars Island could reach nearly 3 million when it was not at war. At this moment, all the people were participating in the war, and the 4 cities were almost empty. Seeing this scene, the food in Ning Jing's hand didn't taste good anymore. She found that the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven were really ruthless. From the looks of it, they were treating humans like the Zergs, right? Especially in the battle at Pearl Harbor. At this moment, Ning Jing saw that nearly 60,000 human soldiers had gathered. Among them, there were 10,000 people who were hidden fishers or above. If Han Fei were here, he would have found that different from the battle on the ancient battlefield. This time, Shueishenqi even used peak-level hidden fishers. 50,000 kilometers away from the Pearl Divers port was the limit of human support. After all, there were only so many people. If they went any further, they wouldn't be able to take care of all of them. Also, Shueishenqi was very sure that the sea demons attacked the Pearl Divers port because their real target wasn't here. This time, he was so bold because Han Fei brought back a trump card, which was Jing Er. Of course, such a trump card couldn't be used under normal circumstances. However, whether he used it or not was one thing, and whether he had it or not was another. On the Sea of Pearls, where the armies were confronting each other, the one who challenged Shueishenqi was Blue Feather, the leader of the 8 wings of Blue Feather. However, just like Shueishenqi, Blue Feather was also a venerable. After all, even the Sea Demon King City had come out. The strength of the 10,000 Demon Valley at this time was not the same as before. The more experts they had, the more confidence they had. Blue Feather sneered, and his voice was so loud that it could be heard everywhere. Shueishenqi, you're very bold today. Aren't you worried that I'll eat all your people? Shueishenqi's face was cold, and his voice was equally loud. Everyone can talk big. Why don't you eat one of them? Blue Feather's face turned cold, and he gnashed his teeth. Shueishenqi, in the battle a few days ago, the venerable of the Sea Clan died, and all the Tao-seeking state and sea spirits were annihilated. Don't think I don't know that it was your trick. You broke the rules and quickly suppressed the sea demons, leaving me no excuse. Good move. You betrayed the rules and killed one of our venerables, 10 sea spirits, and more than 4,000 sea demons. You won't lose anything from this, will you? Shueishenqi sneered. I don't know what you're talking about. Besides, you have the nerve to mention the rules? Every time a battle breaks out, the sea demon army is several times larger than the human race. Is this what you call fairness? Is this what you call the rules? I didn't care about it before, but now I can't be careless. Blue Feather sneered. We sea demons have a large number of people. What can you do to us? Shueishenqi said lightly, the human race has many means. What can you do to us if we kill you? Both sides, whether it was the humans or the sea demons, were pondering. The sea demons were full of confidence. General Blue Feather personally led the battle, and the news that the human race didn't abide by the rules spread everywhere. For a time, roars filled the sky. Roar! Destroy the human race. Those who don't abide by the rules deserve to be slaughtered. How can a small human race talk about the rules? This time, we must destroy the scattered Star Island. And the human race also didn't show any weakness. The battlefield at the bottom was not far away. After all, if they fought on their own, the two armies would have to fight each other, so they naturally had to be closer. When the two armies fought on the waves, their roars shook the sky. That was heroic and extraordinary. Hearing all kinds of mockery from the sea demons, someone immediately looked up to the sky and roared, "Little brat, bullsh asterisk T. Why do we need to pretend to kill the enemy?" Someone scolded angrily, "What a joke. The sea demons have never been strong. Our human race has many strong masters. It's easy for us to defeat you." Every time there is a war, the number of sea demons is several times that of the human race. How dare you talk here? If I were you, I would have committed suicide long ago. Above, a sea demon venerable seemed to be dissatisfied with Shueishenqi's attitude. He tore the void and stepped out. This person said coldly, "The human race only has a territory of 1,000 kilometers. Do you think you can defeat the sea demon army? Who gave you the courage?" Shueishenqi glanced at him indifferently. "Me? You're so impatient that you can jump out and refute me? Blue Feather, you're the master of the 10,000 Demon Valley, but you can't even control your own venerable?" Blue Feather's face changed slightly. Shueishenqi, this bastard, said this on purpose. He was trying to sow discord between him and the strong masters in the royal city. Of course, the sea demon venerable was not stupid. He knew what he meant. He shouted, "The human race only controls this part of the world, a mere 1,000 li in circumference. Why do you have to fight so hard? Shueishenqi, let's see how you can stop us this time." Shueishenqi snorted coldly. "Elites? I've probably fought more battles than you've eaten. Who do you think you're fooling?" Shueishenqi didn't bother to talk to him and said bluntly, "Sun Baisheng, this person is yours. If you let him in, you'll be punished by military law." Wasn't Sun Baisheng the new venerable of the Sun family? Just 8 or 9 years ago, he was beaten up by Old Han to the point where he didn't even have the slightest temper. At this moment, he complained slightly. "Bastard, Shueishenqi is using a fish scale as a token of authority. But do you really think I'm a soldier when we're in the same realm?" Yang Kuan sneered. "I don't like his tone. In the future, he won't be able to come to the 1,000-star city." Chu Qing said, "Just go. After all, we have more important things to do on the Scattered Stars Island." Shueishenqi's expression changed slightly. The void was torn apart, and Sun Baisheng walked out, holding 2 knives and pointing at the sea demon venerable. "Your battlefield is not here. Do you want me to ask you to leave, or do you want to leave?" The sea demon venerable sneered. "I'm a new human venerable. Let me have a try." The sea demon venerable was taken away. As the main force of the battlefield, the hanging fishers and the hidden fishers were already furious. Blue Feather said, "The 12 Tao-seeking venerables, each lead an army in attack." Shueishenqi's face was cold, and his eyes were ruthless. He roared and the void shook. "Kill!" At the same time, at the bottom of the Empyrean waterfall, Han Fei's body suddenly shook and water splashed. The violent energy in his body poured out. "I've mastered the indestructible body." Chapter 1390. Standing on the huge head of the wreckage of the cloud whale, Han Fei felt the terrifying energy contained in his body, only to feel that his understanding of power seemed to be a little different. Besides, when he mastered the indestructible golden body, he also reached the realm of the peak-level explorer. This time, Han Fei didn't deliberately make a breakthrough. He just achieved it naturally. Han Fei looked at his own information immediately, and he was a little shocked by what he saw. Owner, Han Fei, level greater than 79. Peak-level explorer, spiritual energy 290,000/290,000. Spiritual power 43055/43055. Perception range greater than 5,800 kilometers. Strength greater than 1,708 waves. First spiritual heritage, unknown. Second spiritual heritage, unawakened. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit, swallowing fish, level 67. Second spiritual beast, unawakened. Main art, sky stealing technique. Level 6 of void fishing. Venerable level, divine quality. The upper limit of spiritual energy. Increased by 50,000 points. The power of his soul increased by more than 2,000 points. His perception increased by 1,300 kilometers. His strength increased by nearly 700 waves. Oh no, before Han Fei came down, although he could already rival a venerable, his strength at that time was less than 900 waves. But now, his strength almost doubled. This was a pure increase in strength without using any secret techniques. What did this mean? Secret techniques always had a time limit and required a lot of energy to maintain. However, if his own strength was so sufficient, he wouldn't have to consider this problem at all. He only needed to ensure his normal energy consumption. It could be said that the indestructible golden body directly made Han Fei's comprehensive strength several times stronger than that of the previous advanced explorer realm. This was just the peak-level explorer. After this, there was still the demi-venerable realm. In fact, the three realms, the peak-level advanced explorer, the peak-level explorer, and the demi-venerable, were theoretically on the same line because their levels were the same. However, in terms of strength, the difference was like heaven and earth. Ordinary people cultivated hard and finally reached the peak-level advanced explorer, which was just the end of this realm. However, there were also strong and weak people in the same realm. Therefore, those who worked hard to pursue perfection and unearth their potential would eventually become peak-level explorers. If a peak explorer began to seek the great Tao and beg for a breakthrough, then after comprehending a certain great Tao or grasping a portion of the great Tao's power, this realm would be known as half-venerable. In terms of levels, these three stages were actually the same. In terms of strength, it was not easy to differentiate them. After all, everyone had a different foundation. For example, compared with some ordinary explorers, Han Fei was very different. Han Fei felt that he had reached his peak and his strength had soared. As long as it was completely stabilized and polished, the half-venerable realm actually had nothing to do with unearthing one's potential. It was completely related to the great Tao. His strength had changed so much that he had to adapt to the gravity after taking a few steps casually. Han Fei's heart was surging. From the data alone, the data only provided the most intuitive value. As a matter of fact, Han Fei also felt that his ability to resist blows had probably exceeded the limits that normal people could understand. In fact, he didn't even know if it was an illusion or what. Han Fei felt that every drop of his blood seemed to be full of vitality. This naturally made Han Fei think of a possibility. Blood rebirth? Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. Yes, he found that he might have mastered some power of the venerable realm and could be reborn from a single drop of blood. However, Han Fei was still confused and hurriedly asked, "Old Yuan, how exactly is the blood rebirth? My golden body has been formed. Even if I die in the future, if I can be reborn from a single drop of blood, what about my golden body?" What Han Fei meant was that if he died, his golden body would still be there. But if he was reborn, wouldn't his golden body be gone? The old turtle said, "You need to understand what blood rebirth means. Rebirth means that your soul, is not destroyed. Blood rebirth means that you will have two ways. One is that you have a massive amount of energy to reconstruct a brand new self. As long as you have enough energy, your golden body will also be condensed. So, you don't have to worry about whether your golden body is golden or not. Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but ask, "What's the other way?" The old turtle said leisurely, "That's even simpler. When you know you're going to die, break your flesh and blood into dust and store your golden body with your essence, blood, or soul. In this way, the probability of being found is not very high. The premise is that your flesh and blood can escape the enemy. Otherwise, not even a drop of your blood or a wisp of your soul can escape. It's useless no matter where you hide. It's just blood rebirth, not immortal." The old turtle explained it thoroughly, and Han Fei immediately understood. Han Fei said, "Then I'd better not die. If the enemy can kill me, I'm afraid they won't give me a chance to escape." The old turtle said, "Of course. The so-called blood rebirth is only useful if the enemy can't kill you in a short time. If the enemy is much stronger than you, even if you are reborn 1,000 times, it will be useless." Suddenly, the old turtle was stunned. "Why do you ask this? Can you be reborn from a single drop of blood now?" Han Fei thought that the old turtle was not an outsider, so he immediately said, "Yes, I can feel it. It's just that it's not very obvious." The old turtle said, "Why don't you infuse some of your soul power into your flesh and blood?" Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei gave it a try. Immediately, the feeling became stronger. It seemed that every drop of his blood and every inch of his flesh and blood could be fused with some of his soul. Han Fei even felt that every drop of his blood was more active. Suddenly, Han Fei seemed to think of something, and the indestructible tyrant body immediately appeared in his mind, and he took a look at it. With this look, Han Fei immediately put on a wry smile. Sure enough, as I expected, the pure immortal body is not really indestructible. If a person's soul is destroyed, what's the point of just having a body? When the old turtle reminded him to infuse the power of his soul into his flesh and blood, Han Fei understood. To really be reborn from a single drop of blood, he needed every inch of his flesh and blood and every corner of his body to be filled with his soul. In other words, he needed to fuse his body and soul. When the fusion of the two was perfect, he could be reborn from a single drop of blood at any time and anywhere. Because at that time, his soul, at least in the land of his physical body, was everywhere. Of course, this kind of ability didn't seem to be achievable by Han Fei now. This was not a small project. First of all, he had to split his soul and smelt it. After the refinement, the divine soul would have to be connected to the main divine soul. It sounded simple, but it was by no means something that could be done overnight. To be reborn from a single drop of blood, he was like a human-shaped container. He needed to fill this container with his soul and let every cell be nourished by his own soul. Therefore, this was a long and drawn-out project. Han Fei no longer hesitated. After a while, he immediately shouted, "Fuse!" The yin-yang divine eyes appeared. Han Fei originally wanted to see through the remnant body of the cloud whale and find the demonic essence. However, when Han Fei looked over, he saw boundless clouds and mist. He was in the clouds and mist, and as far as his eyes could see, there was nothing but clouds and mist. Han Fei was about to come back to his senses, only to find that he couldn't. In the clouds and mist, a giant tail suddenly swept over. It was thousands of meters long, with earth-shattering power and boundlessly terrifying. Bam! Han Fei's body was whipped away by a white cloud. He rolled on the ground for hundreds of times before he stopped and hit a rock wall heavily. However, Han Fei didn't panic. He had seen a lot of the world. What could an illusion do to him? With a thought, Han Fei clenched one hand into a fist. Suddenly, flames ran through his entire arm, and he punched the giant tail head-on. This terrifying power shook the earth and the mountains. Only then did Han Fei slowly withdraw his consciousness from mist. Feeling the shaking ground, he couldn't help but be surprised. What a powerful illusion. I just glanced at it and fell for it. The old turtle's voice sounded. It's not an illusion. That's its Tao. Look at what you've done. Han Fei looked sideways, only to find that the huge body of the cloud whale had been blasted dozens of meters away by his punch. Seeing this scene, he was a little embarrassed. For the first time in my life, I attacked the king, and I even blasted him dozens of meters away with a punch. Han Fei drew his sword. Kings can't peep. This big fish should be dead. Its broken body is already here. How long can you hide your demonic essence? The old turtle was speechless. What you saw should be a Tao. You have to cross that Tao to see where the demonic essence is. In the Empyrean waterfall, Han Fei's attack was so fierce that the Empyrean waterfall trembled slightly. However, the war in the outside world was very tense, so not many people knew about this matter. Below, on the corpse of the cloud whale, Han Fei entered the so-called Tao of clouds again. This time, facing the giant tail, Han Fei activated the Tao seed. Different Taos, different Taos. Han Fei didn't move, and the terrifying giant tail whistled past him, only a few meters away. Han Fei hid himself. I won't steal your Tao. You go your own way, and I'll go mine. Without hostility in its heart, the Tao of the cloud whale seemed to have no hostility. Since he was already dead, how could a corpse have any emotions? Sure enough, a corpse was a corpse. The corpse was well preserved, and it didn't bury any creatures with it, so Han Fei didn't encounter any danger along the way. 3 hours later, Han Fei finally sensed the demonic essence under the shell of the huge fish's head. In any case, it was a king-level creature. Its body was so strong that Han Fei had searched for it for a long time, even though its Tao hadn't been destroyed. Different from the one he met in the Snow God's temple, the demonic essence left by the cloud whale this time didn't leave a barrier to protect it. Looking at the bead of demonic essence that was as dazzling as silver stars, Han Fei reached out and grabbed it. Originally, he wanted to cut the Gordian knot and quickly take everything he could take. However, as he grabbed it, the scene in front of Han Fei changed. He saw a sea of people fighting fiercely in the sky and on the ground. Han Fei. Chapter 1391. Sea of Pearls. This time, Xuexinshi underestimated the determination of the sea monsters. The army of 100,000 was not afraid of death. On the surface of a sea of blood rose to the sky. The humans and sea demons refused to give in to each other, and the situation was extremely tragic. Someone's body was pierced in many places. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose, but this person's expression was ferocious, and he was still shouting, "How can you sea demons take my life? Come with me, Grandpa!" Bang! Someone cursed angrily. "Old Sue, you son of a b****. Is it just a matter of a few seconds? Wait for me." An armorist who had been hit by 6 spears took out 2 iron claws from his armor box and caught 2 half-mermaids. The 2 half-mermaids panicked and desperately stabbed the spears in their hands of the man's body. "Madman, get lost! I'll blow you up!" Bang! Such a scene was not uncommon on the Sea of Pearls. It could even be said that there were many of them. The number of sea demons was twice that of humans, but the result of the fierce battle was equal. After all, humans were smarter than sirens. Of course, for some sea demons with very high realms, their intelligence was not inferior to that of humans. However, in this battle, most of the sea monsters were at the middle and lower levels. They made up the vast majority. Therefore, the intelligence of humans was generally higher than that of sea demons. From time to time, there would be explosions on the surface of the sea within a 10,000-kilometer radius. Furthermore, these self-destructing sounds were all made by humans. These people would drag a few sea demons with them before they died. It was truly a moving sight. Xuexinshi was expressionless. He couldn't move. On the side of the humans, it looked tragic, but their combat power was not weak. Both sides were evenly matched. No matter how much his heart ached, he was still the commander-in-chief. He had to look at the big picture. Many years ago, he had already become serious in speech and manner. At this moment, his icy cold and solemn face seemed as if it was drawn out by the lives of countless people. In his opinion, Even if all the people on the Sea of Pearls were sacrificed, the Scattered Stars Island couldn't be touched. Perhaps the enemy was waiting for him to use the power of the Scattered Stars Island. Peaceful was still eating skewers. She wanted to see what Yang Sky's fight was like. But when Peaceful saw such a cruel scene, she couldn't help but clench her fists. She saw someone who had lost his legs, but was still controlling the fishing boat and fighting. Finally, the man was impaled between the shoulder blades by 2 spears. He actually ignited his blood, using his body as a blade, rushing in front of the enemy, using his teeth to bite down on the sea fiend's neck, self-detonating. She saw someone's intestines flying all over the place, but his mouth was still shouting, "The human race is invincible. For the sake of my hometown, I'll give it my all." She saw a group of 5 separated from the battlefield and surrounded by more than 20 sirens. The 5 of them were actually talking and laughing. One of them said, "It's a pity that we haven't had a drink yet. It wasn't that such a scene didn't happen in the Waterwood Sky, but it wasn't as exaggerated as this. This was because the Waterwood Sky had the insect race, the fearless barrier, the wall of flames, and the ice wall. In terms of experts, Shuemu Heaven didn't lack anything. In terms of numbers, the Zerg's explosive army was terrifying. However, how could these races compare to the human race in terms of emotion and eloquence? Of course, there was also the Bone Jar ice field in the Waterwood Sky, where countless experts had died. However, in the Yang Sky, they didn't care about their lives at all. Self-detonation. With such a gentle explosion, even their souls exploded and dissipated between heaven and earth, never to be seen again. However, these people were chatting and laughing. How could they blow themselves up so easily? Huff, Peaceful's eyes were slightly red, and she clenched her fists. The queen didn't allow her to attack, but these sea demons were too despicable. They outnumbered the humans twice as much. In her opinion, if the battle continued in this situation, even if the human race could win, there would be less than 10% of them left. Peaceful couldn't help but say to him via voice transmission, "The island still has the power to fight. Why are you only willing to use these people to fight?" Hearing the strange voice transmission, Shueishenqi immediately thought of the expert behind Han Fei. He said, "In war, we fight for the big picture. Your Excellency, you should be able to see that these people who came with me today are not young anymore, and they have nothing to worry about at home." Peaceful said angrily, "They have nothing to worry about and they have to die? What's the reason?" Shueishenqi's expression didn't change. The longevity of a human race depends on killing. Without human sacrifice, how can there be a great world? How can there be a strong expert? How can there be hope? Peaceful couldn't influence Shueishenqi's thoughts. She had long discovered that although Shueishenqi's realm was not the highest, his strength was not the strongest. However, he was the most influential person on the Scattered Stars Island. As soon as he spoke, thousands of people followed him. In just half an hour, at least 50,000 people died in the Sea of Pearls. This was just the result of this round of fierce fighting. Although it seemed that fewer humans had died than the sea demons, this victory was too tragic. Peaceful was thinking, should I take action? No one here is a match for me. Including those venerables, I can easily kill them. However, the queen specifically told me not to intervene, unless Han Fei is in a life-and-death situation. But Peaceful was thinking, I have the ability to save him. If I don't save him, I will become a demon in my heart. Just when Peaceful was hesitating, she saw the void shake, and a figure appeared out of thin air. Even Peaceful didn't know where this person came from. However, when she took a closer look, she realized that it was Han Fei. In front of Han Fei's eyes, the battlefield was chaotic, and waves of battles were raging. He didn't have to spread out his perception, because hundreds of people had already scanned him. Among them, the perception of venerables also scanned him. Soon, Han Fei ran into a group of old acquaintances. Shueishenqi was supervising the battlefield and looking at this side. There were energy waves in the void. The venerables must be restraining each other. Except for a few who were commanding the battle, the Tao-seeking state demons and human explorers were mostly fighting in the void. Han Fei scanned again, only to find that there were many broken spiritual energy muscles on this battlefield. Is this the Sea of Pearls? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Shouldn't I be in the Cloud Whale Sea expansion space? Why am I in the Sea of Pearls? Fortunately, Han Fei had seen a lot of battles. He gasped, "Damn it, is the Cloud Whale's Sea expansion space the Sea of Pearls?" The old turtle was slightly stunned. Has the big fish merged its sea expansion space into reality? That doesn't make sense. It can still save some capital for resurrection in the sea expansion space. However, if it's merged into reality, its sea expansion space will be occupied by all kinds of creatures, and it's impossible for it to be resurrected. The old turtle didn't mean to look down on the kings. At the sea expansion realm, dying naturally wasn't easy. There were always various methods to allow one to survive. Even if they couldn't survive for a while, they could leave some means of resurrection for themselves. Whether or not the means worked, they would at least leave some means of resurrection. However, that big fish had actually brought his sea expansion realm to reality. If the two were merged, there was no possibility of resurrection. Not only Han Fei and the old turtle, but Shueishenshi and many other venerables were also stunned. Where the hell did Han Fei come from? He appeared out of nowhere. Didn't he have any premonition? Tranquility, who was watching the battle from afar, thought, "Isn't he on the island? Is there a mysterious channel under the waterfall?" Shueishenshi knew very well that Han Fei went to the Empyrean waterfall. The reason why he appeared here was probably because there was a channel connecting the Empyrean waterfall to the Sea of Pearls. Otherwise, Han Fei couldn't have appeared without anybody noticing. Shueishenshi roared, "Han Fei, listen to my command." Han Fei naturally sensed the gory battlefield here. Hearing Shueishenshi's voice that was already extremely cold, he immediately roared, "Yes, sir." Shueishenshi ordered, "Kill all the Tao-seeking state cultivators on the enemy's side. Leave none alive." Shueishenshi was quite happy about Han Fei's appearance. Although Han Fei was only an explorer, he had the combat ability of a venerable. It was safe to say that no Tao-seeking state cultivators on the enemy's side could defeat Han Fei. Although he didn't know how Han Fei appeared, it was a good thing that he did. Otherwise, Shueishenshi felt that he might activate the weapon himself if he held back for a while longer. Naturally, Han Fei didn't care why he appeared here. At this moment, a great battle was taking place in the Sea of Pearls, and the human battle participants' lives were at stake. Judging from Shueishenshi's eagerness and unquestioning tone, Han Fei knew that Shueishenshi couldn't wait any longer. Han Fei roared, "Okay." Blue Feather was a little frightened. "Is this Han Fei? It's been a few years. That kid was just a hidden fisher when I first met him. Is he a peak-level explorer now?" Blue Feather shouted, "Blood Valley 5 seals, attack." Puff, puff. In the void, 5 figures broke through in a row. Blue Feather sneered, "Shueishenshi, you didn't expect this, did you? I knew you might have some hidden means, but I didn't expect you to just hide a little kid. Although I don't know what method you use to forcibly increase your strength. Do you think a peak-level explorer can make a difference on this battlefield? Do you really think the Bloodsea Valley has no strong masters for so many years? How dare you use a peak-level explorer as your trump card? When the Blood Valley 5 seals work together, they have the power of half of Venerable. I'd like to see how Han Fei can resist them." Blue Feather sneered. Han Fei also glanced at the 5 people, only to find that they were 5 red demons. Among them, there was even an old acquaintance of his, Qishuehuan, one of the original 8 wings of Blue Feather. Although Qishuehuan had long been a peak-level sea spirit, he hadn't passed the tribulation when he left. Now he found that his strength was at the intermediate Tao-seeking state and had improved a lot. These 5 people were all red demons. Among them, Qishuehuan was the weakest, only at the intermediate Tao-seeking state. The strongest was a 6-armed red demon, holding 6 scimitars, whose strength was at the peak-level Tao-seeking state. The other 3 were all at the advanced Tao-seeking state. White light fell on these 5 people at the same time, and secret techniques were activated. Not only that, But the five of them somehow managed to summon a gigantic scorpion companion spirit together. The old turtle said, "It's a kind of fusion technique. These five people eat each other's blood and practice forbidden techniques. The summoned creature should be an ancient being, but it might not be the real one." Chapter 1392. Time was of the essence. When Han Fei saw the 5 restrictions of the Blood Valley, he thought to himself, "The 8 feathers of Blue Feather are gone. What's the use of the 5 restrictions of the Blood Valley? Forget it. I might as well settle this once and for all." Whoosh! With a swish, Han Fei disappeared on the spot. He was so fast that Blue Feather didn't even notice him. How did he disappear? When Han Fei appeared again, it was no longer a figure, but a sword light that pierced through the sky and the earth. "Bastard! This is the strength of an Exalt realm expert?" Blue Feather shouted. His first thought was that Han Fei had deceived him. However, it was already too late. Ice and snow suddenly appeared in the air. Above this boundless sea, water vapor drifted, and in an instant, ice particles filled the sky. At this moment, Han Fei could finally exert part of the power of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. The might of a single sword strike caused all living beings within 1,000 miles to tremble in fear. As soon as the giant scorpion more than 300 meters long appeared, it was hit by Han Fei's sword. Flames flickered on the carapace, but in the blink of an eye, the fire dissipated, and his huge body was instantly covered in a layer of ice. Crack, crack, crack! The giant scorpion's body was cracking, but the Blood Valley 5 hegemons were still in shock. Han Fei exclaimed in surprise. "What a hard shell!" A string of information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Ancient Demon Scorpion. Projection: Introduction: In ancient times, it was one of the overlords of the shallow sea. It lived in groups, and its leader was a demonic scorpion. It absorbed the essence of water and the essence of the blazing sun, giving birth to the white crystal demonic armor. Its defense was astonishing. It had a tail that could devour souls and seize souls. Its tail was swift and fierce, and its strength was extraordinary. It wasn't something an ordinary person could go against. Level 79, Quality, Ancient Vicious Beast, Spiritual Energy, 200156. Realm, Sea Demon, Battle Skill, Demonic Hook Soul Devouring, Absorbable. Note: the projection of an ancient being will weaken over time. To be honest, he was quite surprised. This giant scorpion did not seem weak. However, the speed seemed to be a little slower. He had already slashed out with his sword. His head was already covered in cracks and snow, and his tail was just about to stab him. Buzz! Han Fei didn't even bother with the long hook. An object that was about to die couldn't even be considered a body. There was no need for him to waste any time on this scorpion. With a star transposition, he passed the body of the ancient demonic scorpion. Qishue Huan, one of the Blood Valley's 5 forbidden lands, shouted, "Impossible! How could you become so strong?" Among them, the peak stage, Tao-seeking inferior manfish held the golden harpoon and pointed at the sky, creating a falling energy ball in the sky. Spirit's stunning spike. Han Fei had replaced the embroidery needle in his hand. He also pointed at the void, and a terrifying and overbearing divine soul power instantly attacked the divine soul of a red demon. With a ka sound, it was as if something had cracked. There seemed to be many cracks on the red demon's head, and his aura immediately stagnated. Instant profound spear. Puchi. Bang! The red demon's attack hadn't succeeded yet. He thought, as a peak-level Tao-seeking expert, it shouldn't be a problem for me to stall Han Fei. However, how could he have thought of that? In the same realm, the gap in strength could sometimes be an insurmountable gap. The red demon had only unleashed one attack. He was still looking forward to how Han Fei would fight back. However, in the next moment, a hole was poked through his berserk attack. Then, there was no more, and then, among the 5 forbidden lands, someone roared, "Not good! Master Blue Feather, please take action quickly." Qishue Huan had already retreated. Seeing this scene, his scalp was numb. Is Han Fei still a human being? Blue Feather then shouted, "Han Fei, how dare you pretend to be a weakling? You're courting death." Blue Feather stepped on 3 giant sharks and spat out a green beam of light from his mouth, reaching Han Fei in an instant. Han Fei casually threw a punch. The sacrificing punch was extremely powerful. As soon as the two collided, the so-called Venerable's blow was shattered. Shueishenqi was already standing at a low altitude at this moment. He stretched out his hand and raised his hand, taking on all the remaining power. At this time, no matter how hard Han Fei fought, he wouldn't be a threat to the sea. On the sea battlefield, someone exclaimed, "Oh my God, that's Han Fei. Han Fei is fighting a venerable? Is the rumor true?" Meow, meow, meow. In the distance, there was a phantom of a big cat running in the sky. Big Yellow shouted excitedly, "Han Fei, you're back. Light waits for me." The heavenly sound technique and a melodious melody rose on the sea. The sound vibrated, and the waves of the sea were like sea beasts. In an instant, a peak-level sea spirit was distorted and made him explode. Ling looked at where Han Fei was, but she didn't come over. The battle in the sea was too fierce, and a strong master like her was besieged by many people. Turning around, Ling clasped her hands. Seal. Mystic Sound Kill. He Xiaoyu was originally on duty and wasn't included in the list of candidates for this battle. She volunteered to come. When she came, she probably knew that this battle would be extremely difficult. In fact, this battle was indeed rare. The team that he led was directly broken up. At this moment, He Xiaoyu was fighting 1 against 5, surrounded by rings of fire. She twisted her body in strange postures from time to time, narrowly dodging one blow after another. He Xiaoyu held her rod and attacked with it from time to time, accelerating the attack. So far, more than 10 sea demons have been killed by her. Just as He Xiaoyu was fighting hard, Blue Feather's voice reverberated in the sky. In the distance, the sword light in the sky seemed to be greeting him. "Captain, be careful." Not far away, there was a scream. He Xiaoyu was hit by the sharp blade of a spinning Euro crab, and she was sent flying. Fortunately, He Xiaoyu's physique was extraordinary. The moment she was swept away, she quickly hid her figure, and with 2 daggers in hand, she rushed out again. At this moment, He Xiaoyu also saw it. However, Han Fei had his battlefield, and she had her own battlefield. They should both defend each other. After knocking Blue Feather back with a punch, Han Fei flashed 100 kilometers away, as if he had teleported. He was so fast that even the Tao-seeking state demons couldn't react. Pushed back by Han Fei's blow, Blue Feather had no time to change his move, but Han Fei was killing again. He could only watch helplessly. Bam! Puff! Except for the peak-level Tao-seeking state demon who was killed by Han Fei's spear, the so-called 5 restrictions of the Blood Valley were all killed. As for the rest of them, Han Fei killed them with a punch, a knife, and a stick as fast as lightning. In the end, when there was only Qi Shue Huan left, Han Fei didn't even need to do it himself. He had already used the void lines. Although Qi Shue Huan seemed to have a soul-protecting secret treasure, how strong was Han Fei now? How could a soul-type secret treasure, which wasn't particularly powerful, stop Han Fei? Qi Shue Huan's body stagnated inexplicably, and Han Fei stepped directly to Qi Shue Huan's side. At this moment, Han Fei didn't have time to use the soul-searching technique, but he could use the void lines to check Qi Shue Huan's information. Images flashed in Han Fei's mind. He saw that outside the 10,000 Demon Valley, between the 10,000 Demon Valley and the Royal City, there was an underground crack. There was a picture of a venerable covered in blood crawling out of it. In addition, there seemed to be 3 sea demon venerables sitting cross-legged around the crack. In that crack, there seemed to be a trace of energy pulling. It seemed to be trying to make the crack bigger. "I see." Han Fei sneered. It was a place similar to a teleportation array. Sure enough, there was also a capital on the Yin-Yang Heaven side, but the capital was restricted by some kind of power and couldn't come here directly. He didn't know what method Blue Feather used, but he just opened a gap between the 10,000 Demon Valley and the capital, for which people could pass through. Han Fei wasn't sure how many strong masters there were in the 10,000 Demon Valley today. However, no matter what, he couldn't let all the strong masters of the Sea Demon King City crawl through that crack. Otherwise, the consequences would be serious. Han Fei read a memory of Qi Shue Huan and felt the struggle of his soul. Han Fei transmitted telepathically me. By the way, I forgot to tell you one thing. Back then, I also stayed in the 10,000 Demon Valley. At that time, I used the alias Yu Fei. Puff, puff, puff. Blood spurted out of Qi Shue Huan's 7 orifices. He seemed to be angered by Han Fei. However, before Han Fei could show off for long, he immediately felt the void shake. At least 2 parts of the void cracked, and Blue Feather and the other one attacked him at the same time. Humph! The 2 of them joined forces? What a show! Han Fei was about to take action, but Xue Xinqi blocked in front of him. Xue Xinqi said, "I've fought with Blue Feather too many times. Why don't you try to kill him?" After saying that, Xue Xinqi tore through the air and directly slapped a big hand that came from the void. Seeing Blue Feather stabbing at him with a dazzling harpoon, with a thought from Han Fei, Qi Shue Huan exploded with a bang. Oh! The terrifying power of Qi Shue Huan's self-explosion was swallowed by Han Fei. At the same time, the infinity water entangled, and a scimitar array appeared around Han Fei. Chilla! Han Fei ripped open the void and cursed, "Blue Feather, you old turtle. You wanted to kill me before? Today, I'm going to cut you into 10 pieces." Humph! Blue Feather also tore open the void, not giving Han Fei a chance to leave. In Blue Feather's view, although things were beyond his expectations, after all, Han Fei hadn't reached the Venerable Realm. Since Han Fei hadn't reached the Venerable Realm, he was definitely no match for him. Besides, no matter what, he couldn't let Han Fei stay here to confront him. Han Fei's growth seemed to be extremely fast. Compared with Xue Xinqi, although he didn't know much about this kid, he was definitely not a law-abiding person. As the commander, Xue Xinqi had a lot of scruples, but Han Fei wasn't. Blue Feather hadn't fought with Han Fei before, so he didn't know what Han Fei was capable of. But now he had an opportunity to take Han Fei away. In this way, although Xue Xinqi's trump card killed the 5 forbidden beasts of the Blood Valley, it didn't really change the outcome of this battle. When Han Fei tore open the void, the Venerables didn't think Han Fei could defeat Blue Feather. Having been in charge of the 10,000 Demon Valley for so many years, how could Blue Feather be weak? At the moment when Han Fei tore open the void and was wrapped in darkness, he shook his head slightly. "I'm afraid that Blue Feather won't survive." Chapter 1393. Although Ningjing hadn't been with Han Fei for a long time, she basically knew what Han Fei had done in the Shuemu Heaven. It could be said that on the first day Han Fei arrived in the Shuemu Heaven, he had already started to make trouble. Later, how many times had she cooperated with Han Fei to put on a show? It could even be said that since Han Fei arrived in the Shuemu Heaven, there were basically no small things. This fellow could single-handedly wreak havoc in the White Bell's capital city. As it turned out, Han Fei didn't intend to fight for 300 rounds. In the void, Han Fei held the embroidery needle and grinned. "Old Blue Feather, do you regret not killing me back then? Today, I'd like to see what you're capable of." Blue Feather snorted coldly. "Human brat, no matter how talented you are, I don't believe your foundation is solid enough to cross 3 realms in just over a decade." Clatter, the Blue Feather harpoon spun, and a water giant rose under it. However, it was different from the water law enforcement ability of ordinary sea demons. Han Fei found that this water giant was actually a bit similar to his own invincible will. In the first confrontation, neither of them talked nonsense. Blue Feather wanted to test Han Fei's strength. The water giant held a giant harpoon and pointed it forward like starlight, setting fire to the void. A cunning glint flashed in Han Fei's eyes. His body suddenly swelled, his muscles bulged, and terrifying energy gathered on his rod, intending to pierce through the water giant with all his strength. Seeing this scene, Blue Feather's pupils constricted. Before the rod's shadow arrived, the void was already trembling. Bam! Ripples overlapped and shook wildly. Blue Feather retreated hundreds of meters, and so did Han Fei. However, at the moment he landed, Han Fei flicked his hand into his sleeve slightly, and spiritual energy surged on his body, hiding a touch of blood. Blue Feather sneered in his heart. Han Fei is indeed extraordinary. His strength has completely entered the venerable realm. However, after all, his realm is still low, and he was still a little injured after taking 80% of my full-strength attack. Do you think I didn't see it? In this way, Blue Feather concluded that although Han Fei was strong, he couldn't kill a venerable across such a large realm. Moreover, judging from the blow just now, Han Fei's attack did not contain the meaning of the Great Way. In other words, the reason why Han Fei was so strong was entirely because of his strength. But even if he was strong, it was enough to explain the problem. This meant that Han Fei's physique had reached the venerable level. Otherwise, how could he use the power of a venerable one? In fact, this power seemed to be slightly stronger than his own. Blue Feather sneered. Han Fei, your strength is just your strength. You don't understand what a true Great Tao is. As he spoke, the three giant sharks beneath Blue Feather bared their fangs and roared. Their bodies twisted into the shape of water and actually elongated into the body of a giant python. Blue Feather pointed the harpoon in his hand, and a rain of blue light arrows poured out. The waterman roared, grabbed the harpoon with both hands, raised it high, and smashed it down. Nonsense! Seeing Blue Feather's seemingly fierce attacks, Han Fei blurted out, Bullsh asterisk T. Han Fei said, I really haven't comprehended the Tao yet. But where's thy road? You mean this waterman? Or this water control technique? Do you think I can't? The old turtle also said, You're just a little demon who thinks so highly of himself. The road of the Great Way leads to the same destination. You just entered the venerable realm and you're already talking about the Tao. You're really naive. 10,000 knives in one. Han Fei grinned. You have the ocean arrow stream. Let's see the peak of my infinity water. Let's see which is more powerful, your rain of arrows all over the sky, or my deadly knife strike. With the indestructible golden body, Han Fei ignored the terrifying halberd falling from the sky. He just held the sword with both hands and poured a massive amount of spiritual energy into it. The sword light spurted out hundreds of meters long. Sword drawing technique. Rumble, with a puff, Blue Feather vomited blood. The giant waterman and the giant halberd were smashed by Han Fei's arrow. Even so, it was still not enough. That sword-drawing technique almost broke the ultra-quality divine weapon in his hand. The power was so great that he was sent flying hundreds of kilometers away. Blue Feather had to admit that Han Fei was strong. At least his strength was unparalleled in the same realm. It was hard to imagine how terrifying Han Fei's strength would be if he was allowed to break through to the venerable realm. It was rumored that there were people who had the physique of a king. Maybe Han Fei had the potential in this regard. The water giant collapsed, and the knife light condensed by Han Fei's infinity water was also terrifying. At this moment, like a sharp spear blade, it seemed to pierce through Blue Feather. Clang, Blue Feather clasped his hands and blocked with his harpoon. 100 meters around him suddenly turned into a ball. The terrifying impact directly blasted the air next to him into a ball of dense light. Blue Feather was a little horrified. However, he still didn't believe that Han Fei could defeat him. Although his hands, mouth, and nose were bleeding, he shouted, Han Fei, do you really think my Tao is in the shape of water? Huh! Dragon, whale, soul devour. The three sharks that were gradually turning into giant pythons suddenly melted and turned into three huge mouths. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name, three-headed dragon whale. Mutated, introduction, a mutated three-headed dragon whale. This creature was originally a companion spirit, but because it was swallowed and possessed by the host, it merged with the host and became the host's incarnation, even deriving Tao. There was a soul-scattering storm in the body of the dragon whale. If one soul was not strong enough, it would be difficult for him not to be affected. Level 80 quality? Contains spiritual energy 354413. Effect, inedible, collectible, none absorbable. Remarks, a weird deformed creature. Its original spirit was swallowed by the host. When he saw this information, Han Fei felt that these strong masters were simply too abnormal. In order to become stronger, they would do anything. It even swallowed its own companion spirit. Was this what a F*** human being would do? Oh, no. Sea demons were not human beings. Although it was said in history that sea demons were transformed from human beings, that was only in the beginning. Later, after countless generations of reproduction, it was said that the Sea King had transformed into the Great Way of Heaven. Sea creatures were able to transform, so the sea monsters that came later would most likely have lost their human bloodline. Although Blue Feather's means were abnormal, Han Fei didn't doubt his strength. However, Han Fei didn't think that this incarnation of Blue Feather could really deal with him. Even if this incarnation was his Tao, the three big mouths directly swallowed the entire space where Han Fei was, which horrified the other venerables. Even Xuexinshi's heart skipped a beat. He had fought with Blue Feather many times, but he had never seen the three-headed shark under Blue Feather have such an ability. Ha! Blue Feather, I didn't expect you to have some trump cards. If it weren't for the mutation of this three-headed shark today, I'm afraid we would also think that this is just an ordinary shark. A sea demon venerable laughed. While fighting with Chu Qing, that person observed this side. However, the battle between the two seemed fierce, but in fact, it was just a perfunctory fight. There wasn't even a wound on the middle-level venerable's body. On the other side, there was a sea demon venerable fighting against two venerables. They were all middle-level venerables, and they were even suppressing Yang, Kuan, and Yi Kai. In the end, Sun Baisheng and a beginner sea demon venerable seemed to be fighting fiercely and even badly mutilated. However, there was not a single fatal wound. The fiercest one was none other than Xuexinshi. His broad-edged, long knife floated in front of him. With a casual slash, he could cut out tens of thousands of knife shadows. The knife intent soared into the sky, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. However, in the first battle, Xuexinshi actually traded blows with the opponent. With one slash, Xuexinshi's body was cut in half, and his lower body exploded. And the opponent, a beginner venerable, was directly cut into pieces. Half of his body exploded, but Xuexinshi didn't even scream. He turned his hand, and energy returned, and his body reassembled. And the opponent was also reassembling his body. At this moment, Han Fei was swallowed, which attracted his attention. As soon as Han Fei was swallowed, he felt a sticky and extremely strange suction force, which seemed to want to invade his soul. Han Fei tried to summon the infinity water back. However, this space cut off the connection between him and the infinity water. When Han Fei was about to merge the infinity water into one, he heard Blue Feather shout, "Once you enter my mouth, you'll never survive. No matter how powerful you are, you'll still die." Chilla, Blue Feather took the opportunity to tear open the void and shouted, "Do it!" Hum. At that moment, the sea demon venerable suddenly arrived in the twisted jungle, the ancient battlefield, and other places. Even on the ancient battlefield, two venerables appeared, forcing the six-sword ancestor to go to sea. Behind Elder Bingyun was the Scattered Stars Island. When the sea demon venerable's aura arrived, she looked in the direction of the Sea of Pearls and thought to herself, the battle between the venerables must not break out on the Scattered Stars Island. My opponent is here, so I have to kill him. At that moment, everyone was shocked. The sea demons still had a backup plan. Everyone was shocked. Was the battle in the Sea of Pearls not enough? Did the sea demons want to take down the Scattered Stars Island? Xuexinshi immediately heard Han Fei's anxious voice. "Have you been lured out?" Hearing it was Han Fei, Xuexinshi responded, "Don't worry." Han Fei naturally knew that Xuexinshi was reliable. Hearing Han Fei's words, he was really relieved. As for Blue Feather, with a thought, the three-headed dragon whale shrank rapidly and turned into a three-headed shark again. In Blue Feather's view, Han Fei was bound to die. It was just a matter of how long he could hold on. Suddenly, Blue Feather felt that something wasn't right. Why were there a few drops of water hanging on his body? On second thought, it seemed that something had invaded his demonic heritage. He immediately looked inside himself. At this moment, Blue Feather's soul suddenly trembled, and there seemed to be a horror behind him. Shuai Shinchi tried to protect himself, but he heard a voice exploding in his ears. This place is forbidden. Huh! Hundreds of beasts ran rampant, their hooves stepping on the void. Han Fei seemed to suddenly appear, holding an embroidery needle and stabbing it into the sky, shouting, "Knock on the heavenly gate." Bam! A layer of scales on Blue Feather's body rose up, and a big hole was directly pierced through his back, and he was blasted straight into the sky. Below, many sea demons, sea spirits, hidden fishers, and law enforcers were all dumbfounded. What is this? Blue Feather was about to condense his power, but it collapsed in an instant and couldn't be used here. Han Fei grinned and said, "Explode." Rumble. The infinity water exploded in Blue Feather's body. In an instant, Blue Feather was blown to pieces. Han Fei shouted in his heart, "Old turtle, come with me. Let's kill him." Huh! Swoosh! Han Fei opened his mouth and swallowed, and half of the terrifying power was absorbed by Han Fei. At the same time, a black mist descended, directly covering half of the sky. Not to mention that Han Fei had blocked this place. Even if this place was intact, the old turtle wouldn't give the other party a chance. Kacha! In the sky, thunder suddenly rumbled, and a red crack spanned thousands of kilometers. In an instant, a rain of blood poured down. Blue Feather died. An era ended here. Chapter 1394. During the battle on the Sea of Pearls. On the Scattered Stars Island, under the Empyrean waterfall, next to the deep pool, two men stood quietly on a big rock. One of them had a harpoon mark between his eyebrows. He was a peak-level venerable of a sea clan. The other one was holding a fan in one hand and a fishing rod in the other. He looked gentle. Who else could it be but Han Guanshu? But at this moment, neither of them revealed their cultivation. They were like two passers-by watching the water beside a rock. The sea demon venerable said, I underestimated the human race. With such a strong master like you, no wonder this island with only a few million people dares to fight against our army." Han Guanshu smiled and said, "Sea demons are tyrannical, and everyone has the right to kill them. If the human race is united, we can defeat them." The sea demon venerable sneered. "You and I both know that at this level, strength is the key. Is the significance of a race that great?" Han Guanshu said, "Yes, it is. Now that you've sent so many people away, are you going to fight?" The sea demon venerable gazed at Han Guanshu for a long time and finally said, "The sea clan will not let go of the corpse of the giant deep sea demon. Give it to us, and human beings will be safe for the next 1,000 years. But if you don't give it to us, we'll have to fight sooner or later." Han Guanshu smiled and said, "Let's fight then. Don't talk nonsense about being safe for 1,000 years. Who will be the winner in this battle? We don't know yet." Boom! Thunder rumbled in the sky, and the venerable died. A rain of blood fell. Voila! Han Guanshu retracted his rod, and a red blood butterfly fish was hanging on it. He said, "See, I told you that we could fight." Humph! The Sea of Pearls. What happened? Suddenly, many sea demon venerables were shocked. How did Han Fei come out? In their eyes, Han Fei had been swallowed by the 3 dragon whales. Although they didn't know the power of Blue Feather, the 3 dragon whales didn't give Han Fei a chance to react when they pounced on him. Even if Han Fei could come out, he would at least be a bit embarrassed. However, Han Fei just appeared out of nowhere and killed Blue Feather right in front of their eyes. Space sealing technique? This child has comprehended the great Tao of space. Even Blue Feather had fallen. How could they not understand? However, what surprised them even more was that Han Fei was only a peak-level explorer. Even if the great Tao could be used, how could it seal a true supremacy? Chu Qing and the others were horrified. How many days had it been? Han Fei killed another one? Even if his opponent was a beginner martial highness, he couldn't be easily dealt with. Even Chu Qing and Yi Kai, who were mid-level venerables, dare not say that they could kill Blue Feather, because everyone at the Exalt realm possessed their own abilities. As long as these methods could still be used, the possibility of being killed was not high. However, Han Fei had sealed the heavens and locked the earth, making it impossible for others to use any dharma, which greatly increased the probability of death. If he was sneak attacked by Han Fei, the consequences could be imagined at this moment. Han Fei was standing proudly in the sky, his body glowing with golden light, his invincible will condensed into a giant, and he shouted loudly, "Sea demons have created chaos in the sea." Today, the sea demon Venerable Blue Feather once led his henchmen, the 8 wings of Blue Feather, to do evil, scourge the human race for many years, and plot against the immortal foundation of the human race. I, Han Fei, will kill you as a sacrifice to the people. Han Fei's voice echoed in the sky one after another, rippling into the distance. At this point, Shui Shenqi looked a little relieved. Originally, he just wanted Han Fei to have a try, but he didn't expect that Han Fei would actually kill Blue Feather at this moment. Above the sea, the tens of thousands of human soldiers, hearing Han Fei's announcement, felt their blood boiling. Oh, Han Fei is mighty. Little fishes, do you see that? The human powerhouses will kill their venerables as a sacrifice to the heavens. Your doomsday has come. Kill. How can a mere sea demon defeat the immortal human race? A girl shouted, Han Fei, I want to date you. A boy roared at the sky, Captain Han, the scouts are proud of you. Jiuyin Ling looked up, her eyes full of admiration, and she murmured, So, this is the man I like? Taking advantage of the enemy's distraction, He Xiaoyu pierced the heart of a half-mermaid with a dagger, then glanced at the sky, her heart trembling. He killed a venerable again. He Xiaoyu didn't know what a venerable was at all. However, looking at the sky, full of blood and the terrifying movement when Blue Feather was blasted into the sky just now, she knew that it was not something that the so-called hidden fishers and law enforcers could match at all. Granny shouted, Stupid cat, come back. Meow. Big Yellow was also stunned. A supremacy had fallen, just like that? Had Han Fei become so terrifying now? Han Fei scanned with his perception and found that the morale of the human soldiers was greatly boosted. Fighting for the army, the morale of the human soldiers was high. At this moment, the human morale was at its peak. Han Fei took a step forward and shouted, The human race is never afraid of war. Today, more than 100,000 sea demons have wreaked havoc in the human territory. They must be killed. Swish! Seeing Han Fei break through the void with one step, a Tao-seeking state demon in the outside world who had not fallen into the void was also panic-stricken when he saw Han Fei suddenly appear. He immediately wanted to escape with his blood. However, Han Fei certainly wouldn't give him this opportunity. Bam! A sacrificing punch was pushed out, and a thick fist light, 100 meters thick, swept hundreds of kilometers, blasting a trail of fire in the sky. And the Tao-seeking state demon had already been turned into ashes by this punch. Swish! Swish! Han Fei crossed 100 kilometers with one step, and thousands of knives were like dragons, killing enemies within 1,000 kilometers. Or sword light pierced through the sky, and a silver sword light illuminated the sky, killing people. Han Fei was so powerful that 5 Tao-seeking state demons were killed in just 2 minutes. Han Fei was so fast that these Tao-seeking state demons didn't even have a chance to dodge and were directly killed by his knives. Oh! Suddenly, the sky cracked, and the venerable who was fighting with Sun Baixing shouted in a low voice, Be *starred. How dare you attack ordinary Tao-seeking state demons as a venerable? As he spoke, the venerable stabbed a human explorer with a harpoon, as if warning Han Fei. Lu Lang was only a junior explorer. While commanding the battlefield, he suddenly felt a fatal crisis. He looked up, only to see a flash of silver light stabbing at him. He couldn't retreat. Once he retreated, this terrifying blow would kill at least hundreds of people. At that time, there was only one thought in Lu Lang's mind. Son of AB***, I'm doomed. Suddenly, the void twisted, and a figure suddenly appeared 100 meters in front of him. Who else could it be but Han Fei? Han Fei stretched out one hand and grabbed the dazzling light with his big hand. As Han Fei's big hand turned, This terrifying blow was easily crushed. Han Fei's eyes were cold. *T. I'm just an explorer. So what if I attack an explorer? You're a venerable. How dare you attack a human explorer? Who gave you the courage to do that? The man shouted in a low voice. Humph. Last time, it was you and the other humans who broke the rules. Who broke the rules first today? Do you need me to tell you? Since we've already fallen out, let's do it again. You want to compete with the Sea Clan in numbers? All Tao-seeking state demons, listen to my order. Attack without limit. The sea demon Venerable pushed out one hand, and a long-distance teleportation array suddenly appeared in midair. Shui Shinchi shouted, Sun Baixing, what are you doing? In the blink of an eye, the sea demon Venerable's teleportation array had already been opened. Only then did Sun Baixing arrive. He shouted, This demon's strength is very strong. I was careless for a moment and let him get away with it. Knock on the heavenly gate. Han Fei held the embroidery needle, pushed it horizontally, and smashed it at the sea demon Venerable. Swish! Before Han Fei's figure appeared, he heard many voices saying, Light is waiting. In the camp of the Empyrean waterfall, someone suddenly exclaimed, F***CK? Isn't that Little Nine's heavenly sound technique? Han Fei knows it too. Granny Een shook her head. No, it seems different. Han Fei seems to have more melodies. Seeing this scene, the corners of Joeen Ling's mouth curled up slightly. No one knew better than her that Han Fei had the real 9 sounds, which was in the sea-quelling painting. At the exit of the teleportation array, the 9 sounds great Tao descended. As soon as a Tao-seeking state demon appeared, it suddenly fell into a frenzy. With a thought from Han Fei, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Han Fei shouted, Guard the entrance with the punishing saber. Punishment saber guards the pass. Kill whoever comes. Water luster seals the sea. There are no rules. Fire seed, tree spirit, earth 9, help the humans. Then, Han Fei looked at the void and shouted, Sun Baisheng, hold this person back. If he gets rid of you again, just wait and see. Sun Baisheng's heart froze. Han Fei was ordering him around. But if he refuted Han Fei now, he might really be scolded to death. Han Fei needed very little time. Except for the 5 forbidden beasts of the Blood Valley, he had just killed 5 more. At this moment, there were only 7 Tao-seeking state demons outside. These 7 were all held back by the human explorers. However, these Tao-seeking state demons only bombarded places with densely populated people. The human explorers could only defend passively. The enemies didn't fight head-on at all, which made the human explorers helpless, right? In just a few seconds, hundreds of people were directly crushed in the aftermath of the battle. However, these Tao-seeking state demons never expected that Han Fei would get rid of the battle so quickly. How could they? Han Fei could kill a venerable. At this moment, if there was no one to hold him back, what should these Tao-seeking state demons do? Bam! Han Fei blew up a Tao-seeking state demon with a punch and was about to continue. Suddenly, his fingers twitched. He pinched his fingers and felt a great danger approaching. Immediately, Han Fei twisted his body and retreated hundreds of kilometers. The next moment, a half-mermaid powerhouse with a terrifying aura arrived in an instant. A dazzling light pierced right in the direction where Han Fei was just now. The old turtle said, A peak-level venerable. Han Fei was horrified. With a thought, a token appeared on his waist. What was it if not Jing, O's venerable token? The meaning was very clear. If this person dared to attack, Peaceful could do it. This move was naturally seen by that person. The half-mermaid venerable frowned slightly. He had always felt that something was wrong. After seeing him, Han Fei was only prepared to retreat at any time, but he wasn't afraid. Just when he was thinking about whether he should attack casually to test Han Fei's strength, a peak-level venerable aura suddenly descended. He was shocked. Is it the one on the island? Jinger slightly revealed a trace of the aura of a peak-level venerable, and the man immediately knew that something was wrong. The power of the Scattered Stars Island was beyond his imagination. He couldn't fight this battle anymore. The man shouted, Retreat. At the moment when this person shouted, Han Fei roared. You want to retreat now? Don't you think it's too late? And the man glanced at the teleportation array, and Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Punishing saber, come back. The half-mermaid venerable roared. It's not too late to fight in the future. Han Fei clenched his fists, but the old turtle said, It's right. The star turtle hasn't made a breakthrough yet. It's not time for you to fight. Han Fei said via voice transmission, Stop the battle. This person is a peak-level venerable. Chapter 1395. Shueishenshi was greatly alarmed. There was indeed a top expert on the sea demon's side. Apart from Han Guanshu, the person behind Han Fei must be the reason why the expert didn't take action. If the top combat power was also involved, then with the addition of Han Fei, who had the combat power of the Venerable Realm, the balance of victory in this battle would inevitably tilt to the human side. Therefore, it was not a good time to fight now. Shueishenshi wouldn't have asked so many people to fight in the Sea of Pearls if he had a choice. Even if they wanted to fight, this wasn't the right time. Shueishenshi roared, Stop fighting. Everybody gather. Swish, swish, swish. People left the battlefield one after another. Many of them were already prepared to die for this trip. Seeing that the battle was over, they knew that their side seemed to have won in terms of experts. They were all relieved. However, when they turned around, they found that countless comrades had been killed or wounded in the battle that lasted only a few hours. In the middle of the sea, broken bodies were scattered, which was quite a shocking sight. In the place where human beings died, except for a few who didn't have time to explode themselves, all the others had already exploded. Although there were no broken bodies, blood was rising from the sea. How much blood was flowing in it? Both sides retreated to the Pearl Divers Port. After counting, more than 23,000 people were killed in the battle, and almost all the rest were wounded. At this moment, the spirit gatherers were the busiest. Almost all the spirit gatherers on the Scattered Stars Island could learn healing techniques for free. So, healing radiance descended one after another in the crowd of less than 40,000 people. In the sky, Han Fei recalled the punishing saber and the others and stood with Shueishenshi. The two of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. This was not a suitable place for talking. Han Fei said, I'll treat everybody's wounds. Okay. Hardly had Han Fei left when the void was torn apart, and Chu Qing and the other venerables appeared. They nodded and left with Shueishenshi. They all belonged to different groups and knew that there was no need to get involved in the battlefield at this moment. They might as well observe from afar. Han Fei stepped on the surface of the sea, and humming sounds could be heard. It was the sound of arrays being set up again and again. Because the speed was too fast, the spirit gathering formation blossomed like water splashes on the raging sea. Swish! In the crowd, many people were dumbfounded and looked nervously at Han Fei, who suddenly appeared between them. Han Fei raised his hand slightly, and the healing divine light condensed into chains and scattered in the crowd in an instant. Someone's arm was broken and stored in his sea-swallowing seashell. At this moment, he was holding his arm and asking a spirit gatherer to treat him. All of a sudden, a white radiance leaped over. ZZ. Flesh and blood regenerated and bones healed. The wound on his arm was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Someone's intestines were punctured, and his body was protected by a spiritual energy protective cover. Next to him, there were spirit gatherers trying to save him. However, how could the healing technique of ordinary spirit gatherers heal so quickly? As a result, the spirit gatherer needed to constantly replenish spiritual energy for that person. Someone shouted, "Swallow the spiritual fruit. You can still hold on for a while." Lying on the boat, the wounded man struggled to say, "I can't do it anymore. One spiritual fruit can't last me for more than 10 minutes. It would take at least an hour for my wounds to heal. How many spirit fruits would that take? Forget it. I give up." A teammate roared, F*CKU, do you think we lack those spiritual fruits? Immediately, someone shouted, "Who has spiritual fruits? Come and save him." However, as soon as this person spoke, a ray of white light shot straight at him. The man on the boat was bathed in the chains of holy light, and more than 100 wounds, large and small, were healing rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. That thing was fast. Whoosh, whoosh. The slash wound that was the length of a palm healed in 3 breaths. His shattered chest was completely healed in less than 2 seconds. Hiss. The spirit gatherer who treated this person was dumbfounded. He wanted to ask who was coming. The next moment, a spirit gathering formation appeared beneath his feet and spread out. Following that, a young man dressed in an ordinary black robe walked toward them. Han Fei. The heavily injured guy actually sat up straight with a whoosh. Then he lowered his head to take a look, and he was dumbfounded. Under the gaze of the people around him, Han Fei nodded. Although soul warriors fight at the forefront and suffer the most injuries, they should act according to their own strength. There's more than one soul warrior in a team. With that, before these people could react, Han Fei lifted his foot and disappeared from their perception. This, the person who was saved immediately exclaimed, "Son of a B***, is that Han Fei? Isn't he too fast?" The spirit gatherer looked at the spirit gathering formation under his feet and was speechless. What kind of speed is this? This treatment method was simply miraculous. Your life was saved with just a lift of his hand. The man chuckled. Damn it, I'm impressed by Han Fei. If I have a chance in the future, I'll pay him back. Han Fei walked step by step. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice transmission. Han Fei, Xiao Yu is injured. Jiuyin Ling? Han Fei knew that Jiuyin Ling was waiting for him on the Scattered Stars Island, but he had more important things to do than to see her. Besides, what could he do even if he saw her? However, hearing Jiuyin Ling's call, Han Fei twisted his body and disappeared. At this moment, Xiao Yu was pulling Jiuyin Ling, her face pale. She squeezed so hard that even Jiuyin Ling, a peak-level law enforcer, felt a little pain. Next to her, Xiao Yu's original team members who had been separated gathered after the battle. Someone said, "Captain, don't panic. You're already a peak-level hidden fisher. Master Venerable will definitely save you." A manipulator hugged Xiao Yu's shoulder. "Yes, Captain, after this battle, you'll almost achieve your goal of killing 1,000 people. The Venerable won't sit by and do nothing about it." Jiuyin Ling quickly comforted her. "Xiao Yu, don't panic. As long as you're a spirit gatherer in the Venerable realm, you can regenerate severed limbs. I've already called Han Fei over. He should be here soon." "No." Hearing Jiuyin Ling's words, Xiao Yu immediately activated a spiritual energy protective cover and wanted to jump out. However, as soon as Xiao Yu flew up, an invisible force pressed down on her. A very familiar but no longer immature voice sounded in her ears. "If you're injured, don't move. Will I eat you or what?" Han Fei stepped over, and the holy light technique descended. The wounds on Xiao Yu's body quickly healed. Han Fei saw that Xiao Yu's legs were completely cut off from the middle of her thighs. At this moment, her hair was in a mess. The girl was still trying to cover herself with her hair. Han Fei frowned slightly. Where are her legs? Han Fei looked at Xiao Yu's teammates, who were old and new. At this moment, when they saw Han Fei, they were stunned. An armorist hurriedly said, "Master Han Fei, the captain's legs were bitten off by the companion spirit of a sea spirit state expert, so they couldn't survive." "Okay." Han Fei nodded lightly and put a hand on Xiao Yu's shoulder. Han Fei exclaimed in surprise. Xiao Yu had too many injuries in her body to the extent that her foundation was damaged. At this moment, the old turtle's voice sounded, "Woo, it's just a severed body. There's no need to use the apocalyptic divine technique." Han Fei thought of something. "You make it sound so easy. Why don't I know?" The old turtle said, "Think about it. How long has it been since you last practiced the spirit gathering art? How can you learn it if you don't? Every path is accompanied by various techniques in the process of learning. Why don't you go and learn it?" Han Fei thought of something. Right. How long has it been since he last learned the spirit gathering art? Back then, old Jiang left him the spirit gathering scripture. But that was an array book, and it didn't focus on healing. Now, Han Fei knew that this old guy was an array master, but he didn't seem to know much about healing. However, it made sense. Healing was easy to learn, but the further one went, the more difficult it would be. For example, the holy light technique, the holy light chain, and the apocalyptic divine technique were beyond the scope of normal healing techniques. Quickly healing He Xiaoyu's wounds, Han Fei wanted to say something. However, so many people around looked at him strangely that he held back his words. Han Fei looked at Jiuyin Ling and asked, "Are you still living in the Empyrean waterfall?" Jiuyin Ling nodded obediently. "Yes." Han Fei said, "He Xiaoyu, wait for me at the Empyrean waterfall with Jiuyin Ling. After today's matter is over, I'll go and fix up your legs." He Xiaoyu's body shivered slightly, and a sound came from under her hair. "Okay." Seeing He Xiaoyu's reaction, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh and said, "Then I'll go first." Han Fei was about to leave when he heard Jiuyin Ling say, "Will you come back at night?" Han Fei paused. "Well, yes." Han Fei stepped out and disappeared from their sight, and the holy light chain radiated for 1,000 meters. Soon, Han Fei had basically cured all the people on the battlefield. AoE healing was terrifying, and it was terrifying. Even Shueishenqi was wondering if he should mention it to Han Fei and spread this technique to other people. Seeing that Han Fei was almost done, Shueishenqi slightly took a breath in the sky. "I'm very sad that the Scattered Stars Island won this battle. I, Shueishenqi, have been in charge of the Scattered Stars Island for exactly 50 years. Now, there are many talents on the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei from the 36 towns is talented and tough. Recently, he killed 2 lords in a row and shocked the world." Han Fei didn't feel good when he heard Shueishenqi's words. Is Shueishenqi going to pass the throne to me? Before Han Fei said anything, the old turtle said, "This man is not bad. At this time, you need people's support. It's not easy to become a king, and you need to experience too much. Blood sacrificed to the sea, bones devour souls, and all the people strive for the right path. These are all things that you may experience, and maybe every king will experience." Han Fei grinned and didn't speak. He thought to himself, forget it. Haven't I known about this many years ago? When I went to the 1,000-star city, when Shueishenqi gave me the 9-star token, although he didn't say it explicitly, I have a tacit understanding. That was just Shueishenqi's test for me. Now, after the battle, it was indeed a good time to announce it. Shueishenqi finally said, "From today on, Han Fei from the 36 towns will inherit the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. This matter will be announced to the entire Scattered Stars Island today. Within 7 days, the 36 towns and the 1,000-star city." Chapter 1396. Wow, as soon as Shueishenqi said this, the audience was in an uproar. The position of the Supreme Commander was changed just like that. In the big families, Chu Qing, Yi Kai, Sun Baisheng, and Yang Kuan were all livid at this moment. Although they had a hunch that Shueishenqi would pass on the throne, they never expected that he would choose this time. But they never expected that he would choose this time. Damn it. Chu Qing cursed. Shueishenqi has chosen a side. He's actually siding with that brat Han Fei. Yi Kai's eyes were cold. Shueishenqi has sacrificed a lot by letting Han Fei succeed at this time. At least in the eyes of others, it's a disgrace for him to resign at this time. Those who don't know will think that he can't bear the responsibility of the survival of the Scattered Stars Island and is afraid to fight. Sun Baisheng took a breath. It's a big taboo to change the commander at the last moment. But Shueishenqi did this. He really dares to do so. Chu Qing snorted coldly. So, Shueishenqi chose a good time. I realized that Han Fei's name was often heard in the carnival shops. In the refining hall, Han Fei's books were sold for free. Fei Yinmu's furnace was demonstrated in the street. Shueishenqi had long planned to make Han Fei famous on the Scattered Stars Island. Today, Han Fei slaughtered the Venerable in front of everyone. For a period of time, there is no one else in the limelight. What better time to pass on the throne than now? The people from the big families looked very gloomy at this moment. In fact, if it were someone else, they wouldn't mind succeeding the throne. But this person was Han Fei from the Thug Academy. His father was Han Guanshu, who had a big grudge against the big families. Once Han Fei became the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Once the people of the Scattered Stars Island surrendered to him, he would be a lord. His personal power, to some extent, was even above that of the big families. How many people could a big family control? How many people could the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island control? Even if one used their buttocks to think, they would be able to figure out the disparity between them. In addition to the number of people and economy, the special location of the Scattered Stars Island was closely related to the Thousand-Star City and the 36 towns. In the past, Shueishenshi had always turned a blind eye to the resource supply of the Scattered Stars Island. In fact, most of the resources that flowed to the Thousand-Star City ended up in the hands of the big clans. But after Han Fei succeeded the throne, how could he let the big families get what they wanted? Chu Qing shouted in a low voice, "Inform the clan, we're in big trouble this time. If Han Fei inherits the position of the highest commander of the Scattered Stars Island, it will be too troublesome." Unlike Chu Qing and the others, the mentality of the frontline warriors was different. In the eyes of these people, the enemy was right there. Whoever killed the most would be the one they would admire. I'll admire whoever is fierce enough. I will respect whoever contributes the most and pays the most. Shueishenshi's position was unshakable. Managing the Scattered Stars Island, he had stood on the vast sea for many years and had made great achievements. Han Fei's most famous event was the creation of the Feiyanmu stove. Who didn't know the name of Han Fei for those who minored in refining? Even those who went to the refining hall to forge semi-divine weapons all knew Han Fei's name. Besides, intentionally or not, the rumors about Han Fei had never stopped in the past few years. He would always unknowingly hear someone mention it. In the past 2 days, the rumor that Han Fei had killed a venerable had spread like wildfire, and almost everyone knew it. Today, Han Fei really killed a venerable. Besides, he appeared in the Sea of Pearls and killed Blue Feather, the commander of the Sea Clan. Slaughtering those seeking the Tao was like slaughtering fish. It was something that could be done with a wave of the hand, and it had almost reached the terrifying state of slaughtering a person with a single step. It could be said that Han Fei's sudden arrival shocked the morale of the army with his powerful means. Of course, this might not be enough. As the highest commander, Han Fei's current position seemed a bit too simple. Compared with the previous commanders, Han Fei didn't seem to have any heroic history. There were only rumors that could be heard everywhere he went. But Shueishenshi had spoken, and these people had all seen Han Fei's power. In the end, the scene where Han Fei healed everyone under the holy light chains was even more shocking than when Han Fei killed a venerable. After all, killing a venerable was too far away for ordinary people. At most, they could only see Blue Feather being blasted away, cracks in the sky, and a rain of blood pouring down. In any case, at least these people in front of him accepted it. After all, Han Fei was good at fighting. In just 10 days, he killed 2 venerables. This was F***ing unheard of before. Off the field, Zhou Ling looked indifferent and didn't have any special feelings about this. She even felt that this was a matter of course. He Xiaoyu, on the other hand, mumbled, "Supreme Commander?" Shueishenshi said, "Say a few words. When you return to the Scattered Stars Island, prepare to take over. You need to meet some important personnel of the entire Scattered Stars Island." Han Fei didn't refuse. In a few steps, he stepped into the sky and stood in front of everyone. As if feeling that he was a little too small, Han Fei's body overflowed with golden light, and an invincible phantom condensed, and a golden giant more than 20 meters tall stood in the air. Han Fei's voice was clear and resounded. "Everyone, I'm Han Fei. I don't think you are very familiar with me, because I haven't been fighting here all these years. However, in the Great War, when human beings are on the brink of life and death, although I'm not here, I have been thinking about how to kill the sea demons and protect the human race." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up, and he shouted, "From the moment you entered the island to today, you should be familiar with the way the Scattered Stars Island deals with the enemy. It's really exhausting to be in charge of a place. Today I, Han Fei, take the position of the Supreme Commander. I dare not say that I can definitely eliminate the sea demons, but at least I will lead you to fight a way out. From today on, I will live and die with you." In the end, Han Fei's voice rumbled like thunder, stirring up everyone's heart. As an explorer and law enforcer, they naturally had a good understanding of the situation and the appointment of the central city. Shueishenshi must have made such a big decision with the survival of the people on the island at stake. They had no choice but to obey such a decision. Immediately, 12 explorers walked out of the void in a row. The leader shouted, "Greetings, General Han. I'm willing to live and die with General Han." Hundreds of law enforcers responded, "Greetings, General Han. I'm willing to live and die with General Han." Then they raised their arms and shouted, "Greetings, General Han. I'm willing to live and die with General Han." Han Fei raised his head slightly, glanced at the void in the oblique direction, and shouted, "The Scattered Stars Island already has General Han, so I don't dare to use his name. I'll use the word Han to remind you that I can't disappoint you. Okay, today's battle is over. Clean up the battlefield and go back to the island to rest." There would naturally be someone who would lead the troops. About 10 minutes later, on a fishing boat on the sea tens of thousands of kilometers away, when Han Fei came, he saw that old Han had been waiting for a long time with tea. Shueishenshi took a seat casually and drank the tea. Han Guanshu smiled slightly. "I don't like drinking so much." Shueishenshi had been expressionless for a long time. At this moment, there are many challenges for Han Fei to inherit the throne. But if there's anything I can't do, I still won't give up. Han Fei also landed on the boat, glanced at the 4 cups on the bluestone suspended in midair, and smiled casually. "Of course, my ambition is not to stay on the Scattered Stars Island. After this chaos is settled, the Scattered Stars Island will belong to you." Shueishenshi scoffed. "Settle the chaos? If it can be easily settled, why wait until now?" Han Fei looked at Han Guanshu and asked, "What if there's an extra cup?" Han Guanshu tilted his head and looked at the void. "Peaceful, long time no see. Come down and have a drink." "Ah, it's really you? You seem to be much stronger than the last time I saw you." As he spoke, a beautiful figure walked thousands of kilometers in one step, stood directly on the deck, smiled gently, and sat directly opposite Han Fei. Seeing Peaceful, Shueishenshi was a little stunned. F***CK. How can there be such a beautiful woman in the world? However, Shueishenshi was far calmer than Han Fei. When Han Fei first came to the Shumu heaven, every woman he saw was enchanting, and every man he saw was comparable to Zhang Xuanyu. Han Guanshu pushed a cup of tea to Peaceful and said lightly, "Did Han Fei cause any trouble to your place on this trip?" Peaceful did not look like a lady, especially since she knew 2 of the people there. She immediately said, "It's not just trouble. He almost turned our place upside down. Do you know how many times he caused trouble? In all my years, I've never seen anyone who can cause more trouble than him." Wang Zhan. Shueishenqi's eyes suddenly lit up. Peaceful mentioned Wang Zhan, which meant that there were indeed kings in the place where Han Fei went. In this case, Han Guanshu didn't lie. The other side of the channel should not be set foot on easily. Peaceful pursed her lips. "Did I say that? Forget it. I've already said it. It's no big deal. However, your battles are really frequent. Could it be that in this world, there is only the human clan? It's so tiring to fight on the sea with the power of one race." Han Guanshu took a sip of tea and said, "The situation of each side is different, so you can't generalize it. Although you're here, I want to tell you not to take action before I take action." Peaceful said impatiently, I know. Her Majesty has already told me." Her Majesty? Shueishenshi wondered. The king over there is actually a woman? However, Shueishenshi didn't ask, but looked at Han Guanshu, his eyes straight. Han Guanshu seemed to know what Shueishenshi meant and said with a smile, "Your eyes are on the Scattered Stars Island, but Han Fei's ambition is not here. The Scattered Stars Island is just a training for me." Clap, clap. Han Fei patted the table. Hey. Old Han, let's talk. Don't treat me as a machine that needs to be sharpened. Can I sharpen my skills myself? Do I need you to do it? Han Guanshu smiled. I haven't schemed against you for a long time. Because from the day you came to the Scattered Stars Island, everything has been developing naturally. As a father, at most, I will occasionally stir up one or two things in the process of development. I have never regarded you as a chess piece. From a beginning to the end, you are the general trend in this chessboard. Shueishenqi said, the general trend is like a great bell, sharp as a dragon. What a general trend. Chapter 1397. At the Empyrean Waterfall. Not far from Zhou Ling's house, there was another hut next to Zhou Ling and Han Fei's house. Because Han Fei asked He Xiaoyu to wait at the Empyrean Waterfall, and now that Han Fei had become a marshal, Zhou Ling built a house for He Xiaoyu after she returned. Zhou Ling didn't have many friends in the first place. Therefore, it would be great if He Xiaoyu could live at the Empyrean Waterfall for a while. At least she would have someone to accompany her. At this moment, in He Xiaoyu's yard, the members of He Xiaoyu's team were chatting nonstop. In the corner, there was a big cat squatting next to the barbecue grill. A manipulator remarked, I was wondering why the captain went to the Empyrean Waterfall for no reason. So, he said that he was here for Sister Joanne, but what is he actually here for? I don't know. The armorist was grilling the barbecue with a smile. Also, the captain likes barbecue very much. I was puzzled. What is this barbecue? How does our captain know how to make such a magical taste? Now that Big Yellow mentioned it, it turns out that it's also General Han's doing. He Xiaoyu, on the other hand, was rather nervous and said coldly, You guys don't talk nonsense for no reason. The regiment is so busy. Why aren't you staying in the regiment? What are you doing here? The female hunter smiled playfully. Isn't this all thanks to you, Captain? Otherwise, we wouldn't have the luck to come to the Empyrean Waterfall to have barbecue when the island is on the highest alert. Now, the whole island is talking about General Han. There are all kinds of rumors. The armorist said, General Han is so fierce. He killed a venerable with 3 punches. He killed a Dao-seeking level demon with 1 slash and 2 with 1 punch. Otherwise, they would have been shocked if they hadn't seen General Han in action. He Xiaoyu was speechless. Since when did he kill a venerable with 3 punches and 2 Dao-seeking level demons with 1 punch? Who was the one who spread this? The manipulator grinned. No matter what other people think, we're on General Han's side anyway. By the way, Captain, are you really from the same hometown as General Han? Big Yellow said, What do you mean by that? It was so unpleasant to hear. Han Fei sounded very nice. When will Han Fei come? This cat brought him shark fins. You armorist, don't burn my fish wings. At this moment, Zhou Ling walked over with a basket in her hand that contained some seasonings for the hot pot. He Xiaoyu was lost for words. Zhou, why are you making trouble too? My leg is broken, and you brought so many seasonings. Are you going to eat hot pot? Zhou Ling smiled. Doesn't he like hot pot? He Xiaoyu's teammates looked at each other and thought to themselves, their relationship is a bit messy. He felt that Zhou Ling and Han Fei seemed to be closer than their captain. He Xiaoyu naturally knew Zhou Ling's personality. Whenever Han Fei was mentioned, Zhou Ling wouldn't hide it at all. He Xiaoyu suddenly roared. Why are you on the Sea of Pearls? I've already been assigned to a new team, yet I'm still able to meet you guys? Are you really not afraid of death? The armorist grinned. Captain, don't scold us. We're all from your team. Do you think you're the toughest team of the pioneers for nothing? Captain, on the other hand, you secretly went to the Sea of Pearls without us? Why? Are you looking down on us? The hunter nodded. That's right. We know you very well. You disappeared just now, so the few of us knew about it. Look, without our cooperation, you would have lost your leg, wouldn't you? Pa! The manipulator patted the hunter's shoulder. What are you talking about? What do you mean lost my leg? I can regrow my leg if it's gone. I'm afraid that Marshal Han will be very busy as a new official. The armorist who was grilling the barbecue said, Doesn't that mean he can rest for a few more days? Huh, it's very lively here. All of a sudden, an unfamiliar voice rang out. The few people who were chatting and laughing quickly turned around and looked at the door. Meow, Han Fei, you're finally back? I have something important to tell you. Something very, very important. Zhou Ling smiled. Big Yellow indeed has something important to tell you. Han Fei said angrily, Something important? Are you going to undergo a tribulation? Meow, I'm not. Just wait and see. Meow, as Big Yellow meowed, Han Fei saw 5 yellow kittens rush at him. Needless to say, they were all Big Yellow's cat's sons and daughters. The strongest of them was already a peak-level hanging fisher. He was not weak at all. It seemed that Big Yellow had made a lot of efforts over the years. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. When he left the Scattered Stars Island, he only left 2 cats for Big Yellow. Was he trying to create a cat clan? Big Yellow meowed, "Call me uncle." Meow, meow, meow. Han Fei's lips twitched. Damn, what kind of uncle do you have? Looking at the group of kittens staring at him, their eyes were round and round. Han Fei was speechless. With a thought, a cat threw a large mass of green liquid. What was it if not spirit awakening fluid? Han Fei couldn't help but smile. I won't give you food. You can already catch flood dragons in the sea now. The kittens are growing. Give them some spirit awakening fluid to moisten their bones. The group of kittens picked up their sea-swallowing seashells and swallowed the spirit awakening fluid with a swish. Looking at his skills, Han Fei felt that he was probably a recidivist. Sure enough, Big Yellow meowed. Thank you, uncle. Meow, meow, meow. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched, and he said helplessly, Big Yellow, you've really put in a lot of effort. Jiuyin Ling snickered. Of course, this was not the first time this scene had happened. However, none of the previous victims of Big Yellow's extortion were as rich as Han Fei. Jiuyin Ling didn't know whether she should tell Han Fei or not. If you don't plan to live here, from now on, every time you come here, Big Yellow can bring its cat son and cat daughter to ask you for gifts. He Xiaoyu and her teammates were dumbfounded by the interaction between Han Fei and Big Yellow. They looked at each other in bewilderment. Is that F** King Spirit Awakening Fluid? That's 3,500 points of Spirit Awakening Fluid per caddy? Damn, that must be hundreds of caddies of Spirit Awakening Fluid, right? That's 2 or 3 million points. They were shocked. F** this is too extravagant. They almost engraved the words, "I'm a local tycoon," on their heads. However, they forgot that the price of 3,500 points of Spirit Awakening Fluid per caddy was only set in the past 2 years. In the past, it cost 5,000 points of points to buy a caddy. When Han Fei looked at them, they all straightened their bodies and shouted nervously, "Greetings, General Han." Han Fei smiled faintly. No need to be so polite. Now that the grill and the hot pot have been set up, let's improve the food. Then, Han Fei casually threw out 2 weird creatures. One was a transparent algae eel, with only a touch of silver at the edge. The other was a heavenly spirit ray, 5 or 6 meters long. Meow. Even Jiuyin Ling wasn't familiar with it. Big Yellow suddenly meowed. This is a heavenly spirit ray, a legendary creature. The blood of this one makes me feel a little excited. I'm afraid it has just entered the Tao-seeking state. What? He Xiaoyu and her teammates were all dumbfounded. Damn it, was a legendary creature meant to be eaten? But they clearly heard Han Fei say that they should improve the food just now. Is this what he meant by improving the food? Seeing Han Fei's reaction, He Xiaoyu immediately said, "Okay, don't take anything out. If you bring out such a powerful creature, who can eat it?" At this moment, He Xiaoyu was not as nervous as she was at the beginning. After all, with some time as a buffer, He Xiaoyu simply cleaned up. Her hair was no longer messy, and her face was no longer covered. Jiuyin Ling said, "Let's heal Xiaoyu first." Speaking of healing, Han Fei said solemnly, "He Xiaoyu, what happened to you? There are too many wounds in your body that have seriously damaged your foundation. Did you try to become a law enforcer recently? But you failed, didn't you?" Huh? Even Jiuyin Ling was surprised. "Xiaoyu, you try to become a law enforcer?" The other teammates all looked at He Xiaoyu in surprise, thinking, why didn't we know? He Xiaoyu gritted her teeth and slightly turned her head to one side. Han Fei helplessly smiled and said casually, "That's not how you become stronger. Experts polish their foundation step by step and slowly become stronger." He Xiaoyu subconsciously retorted, "Nonsense. You're very fast." Han Fei was speechless. Even her teammates were a little speechless. They thought to themselves, Captain, you have to be more careful. He's someone who can become the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Why don't you compare yourself to him? Why do you have to compare yourself to the supreme commander? Han Fei, on the other hand, grinned. Okay, sit up straight. I'll wash the internal wounds in your body first and wash away the accumulated toxins. With that said, Han Fei looked at the others and said, You'd better sit down cross-legged too. My healing technique is not weak, and it should affect you. If you can absorb it, you can also try. They were overjoyed to hear this. Thank you, General Han. Meow. Wait a minute. All of a sudden, Big Yellow shouted and quickly meowed. As a result, the cat boy and the cat girl who had just run away rushed back with a swish. They all squatted aside and looked at Han Fei eagerly. Han Fei. Chapter 1398. The apocalyptic divine technique consumed vitality. It wasn't difficult to cleanse He Xiaoyu's body, so it was normal for other people to benefit from it. After all, Han Fei had already become a real powerhouse today. Seeing this, Han Fei said, Fine, Little Nine, you can join us too. Even your growth is too fast, and the polishing of your innate root is still a little lacking. Even when the old turtle possessed Gui Sanqing, he had to use the apocalyptic divine technique to cleanse his old wounds and improve his physique. He was a half-venerable expert. How could it be difficult for Jiuyin Ling and the others? Jiuyin Ling said in surprise, We're not hurt. Han Fei said with a smile, That's fine. The technique I'm going to use will probably clean up the old wounds, hidden diseases, and damaged bones in your bodies. Han Fei's body was enshrouded in white light, and then he shouted in a low voice, Sit tight. Nobody dared to neglect him, and He Xiaoyu was so nervous that she didn't dare to move. Even Big Yellow used its paw to slap one of its sons, which did not sit properly, and it sat down too. Suddenly, above the Empyrean waterfall, a milky beam of light suddenly descended. He Xiaoyu's small courtyard was instantly drowned by the white mist. Meow. Almost everyone's spirit was shaken, as if they had fallen into the gentle healing spring water. Their strength was returning, their flesh and blood were being cleansed, their meridians were being unblocked, and their old injuries were being flushed out by the white mist. They were completely healed. Immediately, everyone at the Empyrean waterfall looked at the courtyard where He Xiaoyu was. However, as soon as Han Fei stepped on it, the courtyard was instantly covered by the mist, and the scene inside could not be seen by the outside world. However, Han Fei's array could block the people at the Empyrean waterfall, but not the venerable realm experts. Immediately, a few venerables scanned over. However, Han Fei was very tough. With a shake of his soul, those senses that scanned over were immediately shattered. Han Fei didn't give these people any face, but said bluntly, Now that I'm the commander, do I need you to check on such a trivial matter? In terms of toughness, Xue Xinqi and Han Fei were of the same origin. Sun Baixing secretly cursed, Han Fei is really arrogant. Ye Kai snorted and said, Right now, his reputation is at its peak. It's not a good time to target him. Yang Kuan said angrily, Luckily, we're not in the Thousand-Star City. Otherwise, I'd kill him. But if he said this in front of Han Fei would probably retort back at him. Look at how capable the Yang clan is. If you had the ability to split me apart, why did you do it earlier? Chu Qing did not say a word and responded coldly. He thought to himself, The higher you climb, the harder you fall. You want to fight for the throne? Are you even worthy? Unlike the people from the aristocratic families, the people from the 7 great sects also try to spy on them, but their senses were also cut off. However, no one was stupid. A pillar of light descended. How could such a pure and holy light really be nothing? That pillar of light was filled with the power of the great Tao. Whoosh, 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 everyone, including Jiuyin Ling, was enshrouded in a milky white halo. The difference was that this pillar of light mainly shone on He Xiaoyu, so she suffered the most, followed by Jiuyin Ling, who was deliberately dispersed by Han Fei. After about 10 seconds, the pillar of light began to fade. 30 seconds later, the pillar of light completely disappeared. However, everyone was still covered in a layer of white mist. Han Fei looked at He Xiaoyu's teammates. These people were even weaker, and a trace of the power they emitted was enough to heal them. Han Fei said, "The old injuries in your bodies have been cleaned up. My suggestion is that you can practice body tempering techniques in a short time. Because the foundation in your bodies has been cleansed by me, you'll get twice the result with half the effort during this period." Then Han Fei looked at Jiuyin Ling and said, "You too. You have to go through a tribulation. Your physique is not enough now. I'll give you the body tempering technique later." "Okay." Jiuyin Ling nodded softly. She felt that she was even lighter. Han Fei's technique was really amazing. It could even cleanse the foundation. Gotcha. Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound came from He Xiaoyu's body. However, He Xiaoyu was already a peak-level hidden fisher. If she made another breakthrough, she would become a law enforcer. This was obviously not a breakthrough. While everyone was puzzled, Han Fei said casually, "The level of your spiritual heritage has increased. He Xiaoyu, did you eat any special heavenly materials and earthly treasures?" After a few seconds, He Xiaoyu suddenly came back to herself and looked at Han Fei in confusion. "Huh?" The manipulator next to her reminded, "Captain, your spiritual heritage has made a breakthrough." "Spiritual heritage?" He Xiaoyu quickly said, "Oh, once, in a mystic realm, some special power entered my body and raised my spirit meridian." Han Fei nodded slightly. "That's right. It's not that this power can't improve you, but that your foundation is too damaged, which hinders the improvement of your spiritual heritage. If nothing goes wrong, the moment this power is activated, it should be able to raise your cultivation by 1 or 2 minor levels. Even though it won't reach the 6th level, it won't be too bad." He Xiaoyu's eyes lit up when she heard that she could still improve. She was about to stand up happily, but when she looked down, she found that her legs still hadn't grown back. He Xiaoyu couldn't help but turn pale. Is it useless? Even such a powerful healing technique can't regenerate limbs? He Xiaoyu's teammates panicked too. It was impossible. Didn't they say that a venerable could regenerate broken limbs? Jiuyin Ling was also surprised. Can't it? Big Yellow, on the other hand, stuffed all the cat children into his mouth and said, "What's the hurry? This is a great technique to repair the foundation. It's more difficult than the limb regenerate technique." Han Fei grinned. It seemed that Big Yellow had seen a lot after following Granny Yin for so long. Han Fei had learned the limb regenerate technique, and because it was a life-saving technique, he pushed it all the way to the heaven-level, divine quality level. Information popped up in his head. Holy Light Guardian, heaven-level, divine quality. Introduction. There is light in the world, which is called the healing divine light. The divine light connects with the origin of the void, nurtures billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The divine light melts with the soul and intertwines with the flesh and blood. With energy as the foundation, it can regenerate limbs and summon souls. Healing range, vitality still exists. The consumption varies depending on the degree of injury. Derived art, grand resurrection art, spiritual energy consumption, 1 billion points note. If you have excess energy, you can condense a holy light guardian to keep you company. Han Fei couldn't help but be amazed by the allure of the great path of heavenly enlightenment. If his guess was correct, if he deduced it further, it would be the resurrection technique. Although it wouldn't be as exaggerated, it was definitely not simple. The last remark said that it could condense a guardian. That was the scariest part. It could even store holy light. Han Fei said, "Big Yellow is right. Repairing the foundation is repairing the foundation, and regrowing limbs is not. They're two different things." Han Fei waved his hand, and 4 lines of holy light appeared around He Xiaoyu like snakes, gathering energy into He Xiaoyu's body. Han Fei took out a spiritual fruit that was still warm from the Empyrean waterfall and said, "The regrowth of broken limbs is mainly about energy. If you have enough energy and healing light, you can regrow your limbs with your own blood and qi. Although theoretically, there won't be any problems after you're reborn, you still need to cultivate for a few days to see the effect." As Han Fei spoke, he saw that bones extended from He Xiaoyu's legs, and her flesh and blood intertwined. Under the concentration of energy, Her legs were growing at a visible speed. Gudu, the spirit gatherer in He Xiaoyu's team, was drooling. What a spirit gatherer! This is what a spirit gatherer is. It's really amazing. If all spirit gatherers could do this, the casualty rate of human beings would be reduced by at least 10%. He Xiaoyu was also shocked. Was there any more amazing feeling than watching her own flesh and blood being regenerated? Han Fei was slightly surprised. He found that a heaven-level ultra-quality energy fruit was not enough. Although the energy contained in this energy fruit was not as good as the immeasurable fruit that the Life Queen gave him, it was still enough. The energy contained in this energy fruit was definitely 1% of the immeasurable fruit. For someone at He Xiaoyu's level, it was more than enough. However, Han Fei immediately understood that He Xiaoyu had practiced the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies to the extreme and had already mastered it. Han Fei took out another energy fruit. At this moment, He Xiaoyu's 2 leg bones had grown, and her flesh and meridians had already taken shape. With another energy fruit, she would be fine. Han Fei said casually, the body refining techniques that can be bought on the Scattered Stars Island are actually not that good. I have a jade slip here, which is the follow-up of the spirit-absorbing war body. You can practice it. As for the spirit-absorbing war body, you can teach it to others as long as you have a good foundation. He Xiaoyu immediately gritted her teeth. Han Fei must have noticed that her body refining technique had not made any progress. After searching the entire Scattered Stars Island, she couldn't find a body refining technique better than the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies. However, He Xiaoyu didn't refuse. As long as she could become stronger, as long as she could stand to a higher height one day in the future, why not? Seeing He Xiaoyu take the jade slip, Han Fei's hand shone with holy light, and energy gathered. An earring, a bracelet, and a bell appeared. He handed the earring to Jiuyin Ling and said, "You can wear it daily. If you need to regrow your limbs, you can use it. In the future, you must practice this technique again. When you have mastered this technique, you can go through the tribulation." Jiuyin Ling smiled lightly. Okay. He handed the bracelet to He Xiaoyu. It's about the same. Put it away. At least it can save your life. Finally, Han Fei threw the bell to Big Yellow. And yours. Meow, of course, other people didn't have it. He gave it to Big Yellow because Big Yellow was from the Beast Tribe. He was also the only pure Beast Tribe living being he had seen in the entire Yin-Yang heaven. With a thought, Han Fei found that many people of the Empyrean Waterfall were already standing at the door, on the roof, and in every corner, looking at He Xiaoyu's home. Alas, Han Fei heaved a long sigh and then grinned. Hey, you barbecue and hot pot. After this meal, I have to go back to work. Chapter 1399. Although Han Fei was quite a troublemaker himself, in other people's eyes, he was the marshal now. But in the eyes of others, he was now a general. Because he was powerful, he had a certain dignity. Therefore, this meal wasn't very lively. It was mainly because other people couldn't bear the terrifying energy of the heavenly spirit ray after taking a few bites. Their bodies were throbbing, and their auras were rising slightly. He Xiaoyu's legs had just grown back, and the boulder hanging in her heart was immediately relieved. If she had lost her legs, she would have died. She didn't know what to do, but it also annoyed her that Han Fei was getting stronger and stronger. Not to mention herself. Even Jiuyin Ling was left far behind. Han Fei couldn't help but think that Xia Xiaochan couldn't keep up with Han Fei's cultivation speed. Could she? Some of Han Fei's deeds had long been spread throughout the Scattered Stars Island, so she knew that Han Fei forced himself into the sea and killed the Dark Hunter Legion twice. Because of Xia Xiaochan's disappearance, He Xiaoyu knew that cultivation was not easy and there were too many dangers in this world. Only the one who walked to the end was truly qualified. She didn't want to cultivate the fastest, but she wanted to walk the most steadily. He Xiaoyu didn't eat much fish. She probably didn't eat much, but she pretended to be cultivating. Only Jiuyin Ling said casually, "Are you going to take over the position?" Han Fei nodded slightly. The succession of the old and the new is always going to take a while. Jiuyin Ling sighed softly. Actually, I don't want you to be the marshal. The overall strength of the sea demons has suddenly become much stronger. There are more and more sea spirits, and a lot of explorers have appeared, forcing all the hidden experts on the Scattered Stars Island to come out. You've killed 2 venerables. It's not hard to imagine how many more. Han Fei nodded. I'll kill as many as they come, but you have to focus on your cultivation in the future. Han Fei was implying that he probably wouldn't appear in the Empyrean Waterfall or meet Jiuyin Ling for a while. Han Fei didn't want to think too much about love, especially at such a critical moment. He had no time to think about it. Under Jiuyin Ling's gentle gaze, Han Fei stepped through the void and crossed 100 kilometers away. The moment Han Fei appeared, several senses immediately swept over, and all of them belonged to venerable realm experts who had already arrived. Han Fei sneered and ignored these people. Instead, he chanted in a low voice, which sounded like thunder exploding over the entire Scattered Stars Island. I'm Han Fei. Tomorrow morning, in the Sea God Square outside the central city, I will officially take over the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Listen to my orders. All the heads of the various departments are to lead the non-staying personnel to the scene. No delays. Han Fei's voice reverberated in the air and could be heard by the entire Scattered Stars Island. Originally, it was only the soldiers who returned from the Sea of Pearls who claimed that Han Fei was the Supreme Commander. It immediately set off a heated discussion. At this moment, Han Fei confirmed this matter in person, and Xue Shenqi didn't refute it. It seemed that this matter was confirmed. For a time, all the departments of the Scattered Stars Island were discussing heatedly, especially the refining hall. A refiner burst into laughter. Look, what did I tell you? When General Han built the Fayamu furnace, I felt that General Han was extraordinary and had the demeanor of a general. In just a few years, Han Fei succeeded to the position of Marshal Xue. A waiter said, "You may not believe it, but when General Han refined weapons, I attracted customers. No one can match our wonderful cooperation." Someone held up the spirit fusing scripture, spirit polishing scripture, and spirit enhancement scripture. The 3 heaven-level refining techniques were sold for free, which showed how extraordinary General Han was. As soon as these 3 scriptures were released, the spiritual energy refining methods were pushed to the peak, and most importantly, they were free. This was something only a general commander could do. Someone chimed in. I heard that it was General Han who suppressed the price of spirit weapons in the artifact forging hall in one go. Someone sneered. Of course. As soon as the Fayamu furnace was released, the price of semi-divine weapons plummeted. How could the price of spiritual weapons not fall? Someone was also suspicious. Isn't it said that the Fayamu furnace was created by Han Fei, Guan Qingyan, and Mu Jiaer? Why didn't they mention anything about Guan Qingyan and Mu Jiaer? Someone laughed. What do you know? Guan Qingyan himself admitted that when he forged the Fayamu furnace, they just assisted him from the side. It was all designed by General Han alone. Scattered Stars, prison. Hearing Han Fei's announcement, Zhang Ting couldn't help but say leisurely, I never thought that it would only take long, 10 years. Is this what a talented general is like? Behind him, Suemo said, Boss, Han Fei won't come back to make trouble for us, will he? Zhang Tong sneered. What are you thinking? How can a talented general take such a trifle to heart? Besides, we also acted according to the rules at the beginning. There was nothing wrong with it. I'm just sighing with emotion. Tactical Command Center. Someone shouted sternly. Find out all the information about Han Fei. After a while, someone handed over a jade slip and said, Sir, it's all here. The man took the jade slip, flipped through it casually, and snorted. Why did such a person become the supreme commander? Selfish, greedy, ostentatious, overconfident, boastful. Someone echoed, Yes, Han Fei really doesn't have many military merits. Although he has won a few beautiful battles, it's too few. Someone said, I don't believe it. If such a person leads the Scattered Stars Island, wouldn't it be a mess? At this moment, the entire Scattered Stars Island, millions of people, from the leaders of the divisions to the new recruits, were discussing Han Fei's name. Some people agreed that strength was the hard truth. Han Fei had killed 2 of them in a row, which was very extraordinary. Some people weren't optimistic about him, thinking that the position of the Supreme Commander didn't necessarily mean that he had a strong combat power, but also that he had to have a brain and the ability to control the battlefield. For a while, there were different opinions, but most people were ready to go to the Sea God Square outside the central city the next day. In any case, this was a century-old event, and it would be a pity if they didn't go. The Scattered Stars' 7th unit. Among them, the 4th unit could be said to be an extremely popular department at this moment. Beihua, Guan Qingyan, and the others were assessing 3 refiners who applied to come here. At this moment, Guan Qingyan shook his head slightly. None of them. Mu Jia also shook her head. Although they are much stronger than ordinary people, they're not qualified to join the Scattered Stars' 4th unit. Beihua smiled in agreement. After seeing them off, he said slowly, "In fact, there aren't many people who can really settle down and focus on refining now that the flames of war are raging. This batch is already the best we've seen in the past 6 months." Guan Qingyan shook his head. Not good. The Scattered Stars' 4th unit would rather have nothing than a shoddy product. With Brother Han's 3 scriptures, his refining level is still so low. He definitely can't join the Scattered Stars' 4th unit. Mu Jia also nodded. Hey, that guy didn't even come back to visit us when he came back. He must have forgotten us when he became a general. Mu Jia also didn't compare herself with Han Fei. It turned out that Han Fei was a monster. Why should she compare her talent with a monster? At this moment, the door of the Scattered Stars' 4th unit opened, and a voice came leisurely. "Oh, why do you think I am such a person?" In an instant, everyone turned their heads around. Guan Qingyan's eyes lit up. "Brother Han." Mu Jia was shocked. "Ah, you're back. You're about to take over the position of the general. Why do you have time to come here?" Beihua said, "Han." "General Han." Han Fei said with a smile, "Senior Beihua, please don't be so polite." Then, Han Fei said to Mu Jia helplessly, "That's not what you said last time." Mu Jia blushed. "Umph. Did I say that? I didn't say anything bad about you." "Guan Qingyan, don't you think so?" There was still a faint layer of frost on Guan Qingyan's face, and his face was still stiff and indifferent. Although Mu Jia was joking, she was right. Why did Han Fei have time to come to the Scattered Stars' 4th unit? Guan Qingyan immediately said, "Brother Han, what's the matter?" Everyone immediately realized that Han Fei must have come here for something. They couldn't help but become solemn. The situation on the Scattered Stars Island was turbulent. If there was something important, it couldn't be delayed any longer. Han Fei put his arm around Guan Qingyan's shoulder with a smile. "Can't I come back for a visit?" Seeing that Guan Qingyan was still looking at him quietly, Han Fei immediately shrugged. "Okay, I really don't know how Mu Jia can stand you. You look so serious every day. Okay, let's get down to business." After he came out of the Scattered Stars' 4th unit, it was already the next morning, and darkness had already enveloped the earth and the sea. Han Fei scanned with his perception and quickly confirmed a place. Then, he concealed his aura and stepped over. After passing the door, the underground passage, and the earth elevator, Han Fei came to a thatched cottage. This was exactly the Scattered Stars archive room that he had the honor of visiting once before. As soon as Han Fei arrived here, he heard a voice coming from the cottage. "General Han, why are you here so late at night?" Han Fei wanted to directly scan this place with his perception, but his fingers moved slightly, and he calculated with his fingers. It seemed inappropriate. The person inside must be very strong. Han Fei frowned. "That Elderchin here must be a hidden expert." The old turtle said directly, "I am an old venerable, but I was seriously injured and have been cultivating here." Han Fei frowned. The old turtle's soul power was extraordinary. He could even hide in front of a king. It was not difficult for him to find a venerable at this moment. Han Fei immediately said, "Elder Chun, I want an old file." "Oh, what are you looking for, General Han?" Han Fei said resolutely, "All the information about Tang Yin, the highest commander of the Scattered Stars Island 1,800 years ago." First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1400. The next morning, the sky was clear, and the lonely cry of the cloud whale could occasionally be heard from the depths of the clouds. On the sea god square outside the central city of the Scattered Stars Island, as early as the first glimmer of dawn, this place was already packed to the brim. The flat square, which was more than 10 kilometers long and wide, seemed too small at this moment. Fortunately, the sea around the Scattered Stars Island had to be guarded day and night. This was a delicate moment when the war was tense, and the coastal defense line had to be defended by a large number of people. Therefore, only half of the people who were present today were present at most. But even so, the 5 cities were all empty, and the noise outside the central city stretched for dozens of kilometers. It was like a speech. Without the leader, the people below were naturally talking about all kinds of things. Someone said, "I think this is the time when the situation is critical. Even if they want to change the commander, they shouldn't do it at this time. After all, Hanfei is not very familiar with the various defenses of the Scattered Stars Island." Someone retorted, "What are you afraid of? No matter who it is, they're just fighting with sea demons. Hanfei is obviously strong." Someone said, "Hanfei is indeed very strong. He killed 2 Tao-seeking state demons in a row. Do you know what that means? I heard that more than a dozen Tao-seeking state demons have been killed by Hanfei. Who else on the island can do that?" Someone rolled his eyes. "What do you know? Those who only know how to fight are boorish men. They're brainless." Someone sneered, "You're the brainless one? If Han Fei is brainless, will General Shueishenshi let Han Fei succeed? Why doesn't he use his brain?" Just as the crowd was discussing spiritedly, another voice suddenly rang out from somewhere in the crowd. Someone said, "How can Han Fei take over the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island? I heard that Han Fei has a strong background. His father is a venerable. He forced General Shueishenshi to abdicate, or he would slaughter the Scattered Stars Island." Immediately, people exclaimed one after another. Someone cried out involuntarily, "It can't be, right?" It seemed that in order to prevent others from eavesdropping, most people even used voice transmissions, thinking that there were millions of people here anyway. Someone also said, "Do you know, Han Fei is from the Thug Academy. That academy once prepared to activate a taboo, causing the entire human race to be in trouble." Huh? Someone asked, what taboo could cause the entire human race to fall into such a predicament? The man shrugged. "How would I know? I just heard it from someone." While millions of people were discussing, Han Fei and Shueishenshi stood side by side in the void. Shueishenshi said casually, "If you want to control the Scattered Stars Island, you have to control people's hearts first. You clearly know that it's the work of the aristocratic families, but you're just watching?" Han Fei sneered. "Watch? Do I really need time to prove that I am here to save the human race? No, I have my way, and my way does not allow me to do this." Shueishenshi glanced at Han Fei casually. "You are different from your father. You are one of the few hardliners among the commanders of the Scattered Stars Island. You don't want the situation on the Scattered Stars Island to last long, but the Scattered Stars Island is limited by the terrain, and the 10,000 Demon Valley is very far away. Not to mention the army setting out, the continuous naval battles along the way will exhaust a lot of people." Han Fei said, "We are indeed different, but it's not because of our different attitudes toward war. What I want is internal unity. I never expect ordinary people to follow me into the deep sea. That would be too stupid. Just like now, I have succeeded as the Supreme Commander, and the general trend has been set. However, those idiots from the big families think that they can stop me from succeeding with some rumors. I really don't know if their brains have been hit by an iron-headed fish." When he said this, Han Fei didn't use a voice transmission at all, but just said it out loud. Since he had already spoken, how could it not be heard by others? Han Fei sneered. "You still don't know me after all." Han Fei took a step forward and walked to the sea god's square step by step in the sky above the central city. Silence. Han Fei stood proudly, his body glowing with golden light. Under the sunlight, a golden giant more than 20 meters tall, like a golden armored god of war stepping from the sky, was walking towards the crowd step by step. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. With a thought, his spiritual fire suddenly rose. Hoop! Above the distant sky, under the feet of the golden giant, golden lotuses bloomed one after another. BM, BAM, BM. A lotus flower with every step. It could be described as a lotus blossoming with every step. The lotuses bloomed and finally turned into spiritual energy again, disappearing between heaven and earth. Han Fei walked forward and spoke. His voice was deep and heavy, and his voice spread throughout the entire Scattered Stars Island. Even the personnel guarding at the edge of the coastline couldn't help but look at the sky at this moment, saying excitedly, "It's starting, it's starting." On the Sea God Square, under the attention of everyone, many strong masters couldn't help but smile when they saw Han Fei's lotus flowers appearing with every step he took. What's so difficult about this? It's as if no one can do it. Some people couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. This way of entering the stage is creative. It looks very scary. In fact, everyone who was an explorer was stunned. They thought to themselves, is this what a F***king powerhouse looks like? A lotus flower appearing with every step? That lotus flower could crush a lot of them, right? Han Fei said jokingly, "General Xue Xinqi, if you don't show up, I won't dare to take over this position." Crack! A big sword fell from the sky. The sword was 100 meters high and looked extraordinary. In terms of size, Xue Xinqi was much better. But in terms of creativity and shocking means, Han Fei was naturally the winner. Xue Xinqi said, "I've already told you about it yesterday. There are many talents on the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei is talented and tough. Recently, he has killed 2 masters. In terms of means and ability, he is not inferior to me. Today, I changed the stage for the sake of the human clan. Perhaps my method was wrong, which made the sea demons more rampant and fiercer. I hope Han Fei can change this situation." Xue Xinqi looked at the millions of people in the field and said in a loud voice, "You should have heard of Han Fei's achievements. The Fei Yin Mu Furnace has raised the quality of the weapons in your hands by a level, allowing the art of refining to enter a new era. After careful consideration, Han Fei's realm, strength, means, and wisdom are all outstanding among his peers. He may take over the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Star City." With that, Xue Xinqi waved his hand and the sky curtain bloomed. Under the sky curtain, the whole island could see the scene. In the picture, Xue Xinqi handed a 13-star token to Han Fei. Wait a minute. As soon as the handover ceremony began, a voice echoed between heaven and earth. Judging from the voice, it was Chu Qing of the Chu sect. This person stepped through the void and came to stop him. Xue Xinqi frowned. If the Chu sect wants to intervene in the affairs of the Scattered Stars Island, don't blame me for being rude. Chu Qing smiled. "General Xue, don't worry. It's not that we don't trust you, but we don't trust Han Fei and the people behind Han Fei." Chu Qing didn't come to fight, so he appeared in front of Xue Xinqi and the others at a height of 1,000 meters. Xue Xinqi shouted in a low voice, "The Thousand-Star City has no right to intervene in the affairs of the Scattered Stars Island. I'll say it again. Get out of the way." Chu Qing didn't give in at all. He just chuckled, and his voice spread throughout the island. Han Fei is from the Thug Academy, a vicious demonic organization. The patriarch of the Thug Academy is an undead creature and has long been demonized. More than 10 years ago, he led countless evil forces to attack the Thousand-Star City, but failed. Han Fei, let me ask you, is this true? You just need to answer yes or no. With a faint smile on his face, Han Fei looked at Chu Qing. If it were someone else, such as an upright person like Xue Xinqi, an obedient person like Jiuyin Ling, or a hot-tempered person like Old Jiang, they might have started a fight. However, there were millions of people present. How could a venerable take action? Otherwise, how many people would be killed? At this moment, facing Chu Qing's question, how could Han Fei answer Chu Qing's question? Han Fei said leisurely, "Bullsh asterisk T." The audience was in an uproar. Was Han Fei so polite? Although everyone talked like this in private, it seemed very inappropriate to say it in front of so many people. Chu Qing seemed to want to see Han Fei fly into a rage out of humiliation. If you don't even look like a general and can't even take a little stimulation, how can you be a general? But Han Fei continued. The Chu sect of the Thousand Star City dominates a region. The soldiers on the front line barely survive, but you exploit the resources of the scattered stars island all year round. As a result, there are countless venerables hidden in the clan, and there are even several demi-king realm masters. However, when the human race was in trouble and suffered heavy casualties, none of you came to help. Now only you, a mere mid-level venerable, came, but you want to seize power and seek more resources from the millions of soldiers. Let me ask you, why the F***CK do you think you could do this? Why do all the big families in the Thousand Star City have to do this? Immediately, the millions of people present exclaimed. They had never heard of the Chu sect of the Thousand Star City. Some people from the Thousand Star City naturally knew about the Chu sect. Hearing Han Fei's words, they were indignant. This was how people were. No matter where they were, they would always hate the rich. Besides, the big families of the world didn't give a very good impression. Chu Qing's face changed slightly. Han Fei, don't try to avoid the question. The Thug Patriarch of the Thug Academy is an undead creature. Do you dare to deny this? Han Fei immediately smiled. The Thug Patriarch? Sorry, I don't know the Thug Patriarch. He should have been dead for thousands of years. As everyone knows, the Thug Academy was strangled by the Thousand Star City decades ago, and only a few old soldiers are left. If the Thug Patriarch is here, with his ability to suppress the Thousand Star City alone, do you dare to fight us? You're a venerable? Are you retarded? Chu Qing's eyelids twitched. Is Han Fei shameless? You just said he didn't know the Thug Patriarch? Chu Qing asked. Do you dare to swear to the Great Tao? Han Fei blinked. I can swear at any time. However, the Chu sect of the Thousand Star City has been exploiting the resources of the scattered stars island year after year, but the frontline soldiers have no resources to use. Do you dare to swear to the Great Tao? Tens of millions of years ago, the Chu sect and the big families of the Thousand Star City sneak attacked the strong masters of the Nine Heavens, angering the Great Tao, causing the Great Tao to look at the human world, resulting in no more kings in the human world. Do you dare to swear to the Great Tao? Do you dare? The third update is being written. Second update. Asking for votes. The third update is being written a little later into this chapter.